I am back, and I have a video today where I'm going to rank every movie I have watched in the year 2022. This is coming a little bit into 2023 now, but it's a long list, so forgive me for taking time. So I will be ranking the 168 movies that I watched this year in order from worst to best. And I'll probably try and be pretty quick with most of the descriptions because there's 168 movies. Like, if I took even just a minute on each one, this thing's going to be over 2.5 hours. So I'm going to blitz through lots of them. But I'm going to start, in depth, and I'm going to end in depth in the middle. Might be a bit. But hey, we're going to see where this goes. And, yeah, so hopefully, again, these are personal opinions of how much I enjoyed the movie as well as how good the movie is. Because, some of the really good movies I didn't necessarily enjoy as much as other ones. And sometimes I just really enjoy a bad movie. But yeah, so just let me know in the comments if there's anything that I didn't get around to watching this year that you think maybe I should watch this year. Because I'll probably do the same again at the end of next year. And let me know what you think of any of my choices, if you've seen any of them, what you think of the top few or anything. But yeah, it's just let's get started with the list. In last place, to the surprise of absolutely nobody who knows me, the Fantastic Four from 2015? Okay, apparently 2015. Yes, 2015. Okay, so Fantastic Four movie. This doesn't deserve to have time spent on it. This movie was a disaster, honestly. The first Fantastic Four was okay, but this one is just... I don't know what they were doing. It sucked. Everything about it sucked. It's actually the worst movie I think I've probably ever seen. And I have seen Howard the Duck, so, it can't even be not worst superhero movie, but, it was bad. It was so bad. The plot was bad. It's about these scientists that teleport to another dimension and they gain superpowers, but it's dark. The setting is dark. It's supposed to be Marvel's first family. They're supposed to be this kind of well, I mean, they're the Fantastic Four. It's comical, so it shouldn't be like this. And I don't know what they did with Doctor Doom. I really don't. And I hope Marvel do better when they release Fantastic Four in Phase 6, I believe, of the MCU. Anyway, on to the next one. Next up, we got a movie called Monster Hunter from 2020. It's about this military woman who ends up in this new world filled with monsters. I think it's based on a video game, but I don't know. I didn't get much out of it for me. It was okay. I mean, sure, it's a better movie than some of the ones I've put above it, but the ones above it I enjoyed a bit more for other various reasons. So yeah, this was number 167. All right, next on my list is the Justice League, and that's the Justice League, the one with Joss Whedon, not the Snyder Cut. The Snyder Cut's a bit better. I didn't watch it this year because it's 4 hours. But the Justice League is, it's an absolute mess. And maybe there's a few good elements to it, but it's not that good. Next up, Batman and Robin. You know what? It's probably the worst movie out of the ones I've said so far, except for maybe Fantastic Four. But at least this one has some sort of funny qualities to it. Arnold Schwarzenegger, as much as he overdoes it with the ice puns, I think it's hilarious. Batman's costume is laughable, and the only thing is just that Bane sucks in this movie. But everything else, it's a good laugh. That's what it is. 164, we've got Suicide Squad, not to be confused with The Suicide Squad from 2021. This is Suicide Squad from 2016. And it's just, the plot's kind of, the premise of getting these bad guys to do a suicide mission, good. The plot, bad. But there's a few good things in there. I'm pretty sure, Will Smith's character was probably the best part of it, I guess, and maybe Harley Quinn. Anyway, on to the next one. It's Morbin time. Yes, the hit movie Morbius, which made over $1 billion in the box office, with the famous catchphrase, it's Morbin time. Absolutely none of that is true. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad movie, as much as people are saying it's bad. And then I guess the memes make it a bit funnier. But there's certainly issues. And I want to point out, this is the second time Sony have made a movie related to Spider-Man, but the character who dances in it really badly. Learn your lesson. Next, we got Diary of a Wimpy Kid. This was the 2021 version. I don't know. I love the books. I've always liked the book series, and I still get every new book that comes out for nostalgia purpose. But I don't know. This adaptation, it didn't seem as good. I mean, the live adaptation was better. I don't know. Just this one didn't click. Next, we got Batman Forever, which is it's an improvement on Batman and Robin, although this one came before. And as campy as it is, I think Jim Carrey does a pretty decent job here. How Tommy Lee Jones like agreed to be in this movie is beyond me. Val Kilmer, he's there's a reason everyone forgets he was Batman. Like people remember Clooney because he was really bad as Batman, but like Kilmer, he's just the one that gets forgotten. So yeah, this was, I don't know what this was. The Super Mario Bros. Movie. Now, obviously, I'm a big Mario fan, and this movie, it doesn't matter if you are a Mario fan or not, because this is nothing like the source content at all, except for the fact that there is two brother plumbers, Mario and Luigi, or Mario and Luigi Mario. And they go into some dystopian alternate dimension ruled by President Cooper. And it's... There's no words for this movie because it's just kind of, they've been tripping on mushrooms. That's what it is. Next we got Hitch. This is a Will Smith movie from 2005, in which Will Smith tries to land Kevin James a date while himself attempting to impress a girl. And that's it's okay. Like it's okay. Classic kind of rom-com thing, I guess, but it's just okay. Next we got Chaos Walking. I think this is based on something, maybe a book series or something. But yeah, it was okay. You know, Daisy Ridley and Tom Holland, famous from Star Wars and Marvel, respectively. But so it was about a girl, Viola, played by Daisy Ridley, who finds herself in a world inhabited by men whose thoughts can be heard, which is an interesting premise. But it felt like one of those movies that just like, I didn't feel that like interested, like it didn't grip me, you know. Anyway, on to the next one. Sing 2. So I watched this because you have limited choice for movies when you're on a plane, especially when it's a plane from Florida to England. You know how long that takes? That's like 8-9 hours or something. So I watched Sing 2 because I thought, okay, first one was pretty decent, and this one I think was a bit of a downgrade. I think the first movie was better. This one was just, It was, yeah. So basically, it's just that Buster Moon the Koala and his musical performance, they're working on this new sci-fi musical while also promising to bring back this retired star. And I guess that maybe there's some okay points in there, but it's not the best. Next up we have Infinite. It's a movie from 2021, and it's Mark Wahlberg. He remembers everything he's learned from his past lives. Now, on paper, yeah, that's an interesting premise. I don't think they executed it perfectly, but it's an interesting premise. Next, Kindergarten Cop 2, starring Dolph Lundgren. This is from 2016, and it's about an FBI agent who goes undercover as a kindergarten teacher to solve a crime. Essentially, Arnie didn't want to do the sequel. They got Dolph Lundgren to do it, and well, it's not as good because it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger, is it? And you know the plot was better on the first movie. Also, the age gap between Dolph Lundgren and the girl he's involved with in this movie, that's something. But yeah, this movie's funny in places, but like it's not Kindergarten Cop. It's the second one. It's not as good as the first one. The first one's where it's at, and I'm probably gonna want to watch that again soon now, actually, because that was a pretty good movie. Basically, anything with Arnold Schwarzenegger in is probably a good movie. That said, he did Batman and Robin. Next up, The Phantom of the Open. I watched this also on the plane to Florida. It was a 2021 movie about this novice golfer, and he works his way into the Open and records the worst score ever, and then attempts to rejoin following tours. And it's not that he's any good at golf, he just really wanted to do it. You know, it's sort of an lesser known Eddie the Eagle kind of story, but yeah, it's okay. Yeah, just okay though. Next, Pumping Iron from 1975, possibly one of the oldest movies on my list, with the exception of one from 1951. This is a documentary film following Arnold Schwarzenegger's attempt to win yet another Mr. Olympia tournament by any means necessary. And Arnold was a bodybuilder before he became an actor, and this kind of documentary movie was about him winning, I think, his fifth Mr. Olympia competition. And he had some pretty close competition with Lou Ferrigno, who was famous for playing the Hulk in the TV series, and was also in King of Queens as well, which was a good TV series. And Arnie, tell you what, he's an absolute sneak. The tricks he used to pull on the others to make sure he won. Not that he needed to, he was going to win, but it was an interesting one. It's not necessarily the most exciting movie, but it's an interesting look into Arnie and his bodybuilding days. So, appreciate it for that. Next up, The Last Train to Christmas from 2021. This is about an 80s nightclub manager who boards a train in which every carriage takes him to a different period in his life. That is a really solid premise, but I don't think it was the most interesting in how they executed it. I thought it was okay. It was just okay. I know I'm saying that a lot, but that's why they're down here on the list. But I think the premise of each carriage being a different time is really genius, actually, and I kind of wish they'd done something better with that. Next up, we got Me, Myself, and Irene by starring Jim Carrey. 2000, this film was from. It's Jim Carrey plays a man with a split personality disorder, and both personalities love this girl Irene. So that is kind of like, in a way, it's a buddy comedy, but Jim Carrey is both of them. And then they both like Irene, which is interesting. So yeah, it was an okay movie. It was, I don't think they'd get away with making it these days, to be honest, but it was from 2000, so what are you going to do? But I think it was pretty decent, it was pretty funny. Next, we've got Shrek the Third, and I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it is the weakest of the Shrek movies. And, it's probably the most easily forgettable one. Like, I'd argue, like, the second one's better than the first one, but then the fourth one is a bit more memorable because it was more recent, and then you got Shrek the Third, in which something happened. Apparently, 2007 movie, Shrek searches for the heir to the far, far away throne, while Prince Charming plans revenge. Prince Charming was a bit of it's a bit of a weak villain. Let's just leave it there. Next, Shrek the Musical. Okay, so you all know the story of Shrek. You know how it goes. The ogre and the donkey, they go to save the princess. Then the princess is going to get married to the little short guy. And then Shrek comes and says, nah, don't marry this guy, marry me because I love you. And then she becomes an ogre forever and Farquaad gets eaten by a dragon. That's essentially the whole thing. But this time it's a musical. It's just from 2013. And I thought it was pretty decent, okay? Like, I don't think it's as good as the original, but I thought it was okay. Next, we've got Uncharted, which I believe is based on a video game series. It's from this year, 2022. Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg search for a lost fortune of gold. That's pretty much it. It's like any other of those kind of, like, we're looking for a treasure movies. It's like any of those, really. There's nothing too unique about it. The dynamic was okay, but it's not as good as when you have, let's say, like, a serious character and a comedy character, like, Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. I'll get to that later. But this was, it was okay. Next, The Mitchells vs. the Machines. I watched this one on the plane as well, and, like, I thought it was okay. I think I had higher expectations for the fact that it was nominated for something, I think an Oscar at the time or whatever, and the fact that reviews were pretty good for it, but I thought it was okay. Yeah, the premise is interesting, but and some parts of it are funny, but like I thought it was just okay. Sue me. Next, The Bad Guys, which I think I watched this one on a plane as well. This is a 2022 movie in which a bunch of animal ne'er-do-wells decide to turn good to get out of a jail sentence, only to find that they actually like being good. Mostly. One of them does not. But I thought this one was quite interesting. But you know, it's kind of a done thing. Bad guys going good. Bad guys doing good. It's a done thing. But yeah, you know, it was still pretty decent. There was certain things that weren't easy to predict. So you know, it's certainly not bad. Next, Arthur Christmas. Okay, so like it was really hard trying to integrate the Christmas movies in with the regular movies. Because most Christmas movies aren't as good as like regular movies, with the exception of Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie. Don't at me. But Arthur Christmas is, I think it's a pretty good Christmas movie. But I think when you compare it to all the other amazing movies I've watched this year, like for me personally, I don't get as much enjoyment out of it. That said, the next movie on my list is The Phantom Menace. So I'm preparing for the death threats. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace from 1999. So Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, two Jedi, they come across this Force-sensitive kid, Anakin Skywalker. And, you know the rest. There's the annoying Gungan Jar Jar Binks. There's the pod racing, and then there's Darth Maul, who was actually probably the most redeeming factor of this movie. It was pretty good. And you know, Liam Neeson. That's a good call. Darth Maul was really cool though. Like honestly, like it's kind of a shame they killed him off in that one. And I know there was something about him coming back in a TV series, but I'm not gonna watch the whole TV series of Clone Wars. That's a lot to sit down and watch in one go just to get the canon. But like, he was a good character. Next up, we got a 8-Bit Christmas, another Christmas movie. Again, hard to integrate it into the main list. This is about it stars Neil Patrick Harris, probably most famous for I'm gonna say How I Met Your Mother. Um, so this is movies from last year, and it's about a young child who sets out to obtain the most popular Christmas gift, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And you know it's a pretty good movie, and I think there's some good lessons in there too. But by no means is it a Christmas classic or anything. Like it's not on the tier of Elf or Home Alone or whatever. It's not up there, but it's not bad. Next up, Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones, only slightly better than Phantom Menace, and I'm gonna put that down to being less Jar Jar Binks. To be honest, like he's a little irritating. He's not as bad as everyone says he is, but he's a little irritating. And you know, this is an okay movie, and I'm sorry, I like the story between Anakin and Padme, and I think Hayden Christensen is an okay Anakin. I don't know what the fan base wanted for whoever was going to be playing Anakin. I don't think he did bad. Everyone complained about it, but I think it's fine. I mean, you know, maybe there's a little too much CGI reliance in these prequel movies, but it's solid. It's not the best, but at the same time, it's not the worst. I'm gonna say straight away, I've only watched the prequel trilogy this year, so don't be expecting me to say, "Oh yeah, no, Empire #1," because like I didn't watch the original or new trilogy this year. If I'd watched the new trilogy, you'd have seen some of them by now. Next up in 141st, we have Pacific Heights. Now, I don't know how many people are actually going to know this movie. It's from 1990. The Goodmans rent their apartment to literally the nightmare tenant from hell, Michael Keaton, who's also famous for being Batman and the Vulture. Um, and yeah, it's about this guy who just moves in and he just ends up being absolute hell as a tenant. And as someone who deals with properties and stuff, like that's kind of interesting. But it's quite a good movie actually. Like it doesn't sound like the most exciting, but it's pretty decent. Next up is Kicking and Screaming. This movie's from 2005. Will Ferrell coaches a children's soccer team. It's football. It's football, okay, Americans. It is football. Will Ferrell coaches a children's football team to compete with his dad's team. It's football. Not bad though. Next up, the 2022 movie Home Team. The former New Orleans Saints coaches a dud team of school kids to become better at American football, which is not football. It was a good movie though. It was good. Although that again, it's one where there's a lot of movies like it and other movies that do it better, but it's still pretty good in its own right, I guess. Next on my list is Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers in 138th. I'm gonna be honest. I only watched this because I heard about Ugly Sonic being in it from the original trailer for the Sonic movie, and I thought that's quite funny. I need to see this, and it turned out to be quite fun. So it's from this year. It's Chip and Dale. They return to detective work to uncover the truth about this illegal bootlegging operation. And I think it just has like a really good balance of wackiness and whatever, and interesting like animation and whatnot. So I thought it was pretty decent. Jam packed with references, and then yeah, Ugly Sonic. That's why I watched it. It's pretty funny. 137th, Krampus. Again, it's hard to put the Christmas movies in the regular movie list, and this one is one that's just like, it's not a typical Christmas movie. So this is from 2015, so there's quite a few movies called Krampus. It's about a family that loses their Christmas spirit, and then they're hunted by Krampus, who's basically just evil Santa Claus, and his evil toys are sent to kill them all. It's kind of a mix between a dark comedy and a horror, and I think it's pretty decent, but I don't necessarily get as much enjoyment out of it. We just end up watching it every year because my dad loves horror movies. But it's okay. It's okay. There's some okay stuff in there. I just the Jack in the Box is freaky, man. It is. It's freaky. Alright, next up is The Expendables 3 from 2014. So the Expendables crew are back, and this time they're up against Mel Gibson. The cast list for the Expendables movies is the unique selling point. I mean, we got Stallone, Statham, uh, Wesley Snipes, Dolph Lundgren, Jet Li, Terry Crews, Ronda Rousey. Like you've just got so many big names in here, and obviously Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you can get Sly and Arnie on the same screen, you've got gold right there. But like the Expendables movies, like they're action movies, like straight out of like the 80s and 90s that you'd expect, which is nice to see more of those in newer days. But it was pretty good. But the lowest of the three Expendables movies for me. 135th, Halloween. This is the 1978 one. I watched it before going to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights, where they had a house based on Halloween. And it's not scary. It's dated. It's 1978. So that's like, oh, is that 45 years old now? Wow, okay. That's some perspective. Yeah, it's not that scary. It's about this man, Michael Myers, and not to be confused with Mike Myers. And yeah, he's this ruthless mass murderer who escapes a mental institution and returns to his hometown to continue killing people. And I think it's a pretty solid movie. It's just it's the thing with horror sometimes is they don't always have the kind of depth you'd expect in any other kind of movie. And I think there's Michael Myers raises more questions than there are answers. Like, why is he able to survive getting shot? Why does he not die? Why is he killing these people? Like, there's so many questions, and it doesn't really answer any of that because it's just like we're just gonna have this guy chase this girl and try and kill her, and then kill all her friends. I think the newer Halloween movies are a bit better, especially plot wise. But hey, this one's good. It's good, but it's no better than good. Next, we got The Expendables 1. Again, the selling point: Stallone, Statham, Lee, Lundgren, Couture, Austin, Cruz, Rourke, and Willis. That is a lineup right there. So The Expendables, the first one was from 2010, and it's about a group of mercenaries, and yeah, they just do the typical merc work. You know, that it's an action movie like those you expect for when you have Stallone and. But yeah, it's pretty good. A bit better than the third one, I think, but not as good as the second. Second one's definitely the best. It's pretty solid. 133rd, Kickboxer. This is from 1989. Stars Jean-Claude Van Damme as a kickboxer looking to get revenge after Tong Po paralyzes his brother in a Thai kickboxing match. The point of this is that Thai kickboxing is a lot more violent and brutal than American kickboxing. And it's pretty cool, actually. It's a pretty cool movie. It's certainly the 80s. Next up, we got the Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen. The 1994 movie stars Tim Allen inadvertently becoming Santa when the real Claus falls off his roof and he puts the suit on. Now, most people should know this movie. They did the Disney Plus TV series this year, and I think it's okay. I think the premise is good and everything, but I mean, it does look a bit dated now in some places. And is it just me who finds the kid really annoying in this movie? Like, I don't know, that might just be me. But I don't know, I might just be that I've seen this movie so many times because, like, the Christmas movies, we watch them every year, and I didn't enjoy it as much this year as a lot of these other movies, especially newer movies I hadn't seen before. So yeah, it's 132nd out of 168, so it's a bit low, but it's in Christmas movie rankings, it's up there, it's high. Next up is Furry Vengeance. Oh man, the first time I saw this would have been so long ago, honestly, but I keep coming back to it every now and then. It's from 2010, and it's about a bunch of woodland animals that go out of their way to inconvenience the Brendan Fraser, who's a property developer who's trying to build in this forest. And it's just funny, and it's nice to see Brendan Fraser in something, really, because he actually he took like a massive break from acting, and he came back recently. He did this movie called The Whale. You see how he is in the picture of this movie? He's about twice that size in that movie. In The Whale. Yeah, he's changed a lot, but yeah. So like Brandon Fraser, he's good, and it was a funny movie. I mean, there are plenty of movies about animal antics and whatnot, but this one's always kind of stuck with me. I've always remembered this one quite well. It's definitely worth a watch if you can find it. Oh, next up is Alien versus Predator. Whoever wins, we lose. This is from 2004, and these humans discover this pyramid underneath the Antarctic where aliens and predators fight. It's. The plot's just. It's not really there. It's literally just we're gonna put aliens and a predator in the same room and we're gonna see what happens. And it is one. I think it is just one predator against loads of aliens. I think if I remember correctly, they actually made the aliens. Like they kind of hatched them there to be prey for the predators to like prove themselves fighting against and whatnot. So that's it's interesting how those two universes mix, and I thought it was okay. Like if you just enjoy the action in it between the alien and the predator, but the plot you're not there for the plot. Let's be honest, you're there for Alien versus Predator. Next up is a real nostalgia kick for me. Bionicle: The Mask of Light from 2003, same year I was born. So this is quite old. It's about these. It's about two Matoran who are like basically village people in on the island that seek the Toa of Light. A Toa being a hero, while the Toa Nuva, which is the island's six defenders, protect the island from of Matanui from Makuta and his Rakshi. Makuta being for those who are really nerdy about it, Makuta Pterodax, being the main villain of the series. I'd say this is definitely my favorite like Lego franchise, and it's a real shame it died out in the early 2010s, right when I got into it. And they rebooted it and it just wasn't the same. The lore of the old stuff was just much better. But yeah, like I always come back to the Bionicle movies because like this was my childhood. So this is they might not be as good as some of the other movies I've put below this on the list, but it's got a place. It's got a place in me because honestly, the three Bionicle movies that's childhood for me. Next up, we got Bad Grandpa, starring Johnny Knoxville. So it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's about this. It's a 2013 movie about a bad grandpa, and he's forced to chauffeur his grandson to his kid's dad. Wow, and chaos happens. A lot of chaos. It's basically if you've seen Jackass, just imagine maybe a slightly more PG version of Jackass, mixed with a bit of a plot. So it's funny though. There's some funny stuff. Yeah, there's some very funny stuff. I'm not gonna tell you. You're gonna watch it yourself. Next up, Bionicle 3: Web of Shadows. So yeah, this is the third one in the trilogy that I mentioned. I have slightly more nostalgia for this one, and I think this one was a slightly better movie. So 2005, after the Toa Metro defeated Makuta, which in the past, before the first movie is set, because Makuta just survived, the Toa Metro, after halt the Visorak invasion of the island of Metru Nui. Visorak are like spider creatures. It's really hard to talk about these movies, so I'm just going full nerd mode, honestly. But it was pretty solid. It was pretty solid. It was again, it's the nostalgia for me. Good luck finding these movies now, though. Next up, 126, we've got Halloween, the 2018 version, which I think is an improvement on the first one. Well, it links to the first one, it adds a bit more plot to it, and I think it does a good job of just being scarier as well, because obviously the other one, like I said, is 45 years old now, it looks dated. But yeah, this one was pretty good. So yeah, this Halloween movie comes up here. It's 40 years after the first movie, and Michael Myers escapes again to wreak havoc on Haddonfield, Illinois. That's pretty much it. And of course, he goes after Jamie Lee Curtis again, same as in the first movie. But she's ready for him this time. But yeah, it's pretty good. And next up, we got Prey. This was like the prequel to Predator. And honestly, it's the first. Apparently, it's the first good Predator movie since Predator, because there were loads of sequels which apparently aren't that good. I think there was a reboot as well, which But the first one's really good. The one with Arnold Schwarzenegger in. That's one where he does that handshake with Carl Weathers. It's like the most badass handshake ever. But yeah, Prey. So this is the prequel to Predator. It's from this year, 2022. A predator lands in the 1700s preying on other natural predators while this one girl tries to kill the monster. And it's like the Native American times. Yeah, it's kind of like just at the point where people have moved to America, but it's mostly about like a Native American group who obviously they have very primitive weapons compared to the Predator. But then again, they've made the Predator more primitive than in the 80s movie where he has like a laser gun and everything. He's got all these fancy high-tech gadgets. But yeah, it's quite an interesting one. It's pretty good. Next up is I Am Legend. If this movie doesn't make you paranoid about vaccines, I don't know what will. So the premise of this movie is a 2007 movie, is that Will Smith is the last man alive after everyone else was mutated by a supposed cure for cancer vaccine that turned everyone into vampire zombie things. I think in the book they were meant to be zombies, but in this movie they turned them into vampires, and the CGI is a little dodgy. But I will say that there are two versions of this movie, and the one I watched first was the alternate version, which has a much better ending. Trust me, watch the alternate version. That's all I'll say about that. Next up, The Muppets. This is the newer one, the 2011 movie, The Muppets. So there's quite a few Muppet movies, in which this guy Gary takes his girlfriend Mary and Muppet brother Walter to Los Angeles, and then they find themselves reuniting the Muppet cast, and they have to try and save the Muppet Theater from an evil oil guy by doing a show. And it's the Muppets. Like, who doesn't love the Muppets? Honestly, they're great. Next up is Minions: The Rise of Gru from 2022. I did not wear a suit to watch this, mind you. Gru interviews to join a villain faction, but is kidnapped, meaning the simple-minded minions have to save him. I think it's fun. It's probably it might be one of the better movies in the Minions cinematic Gruuniverse, but it's quite fun. Honestly, I think most people just watched it because of the Gentle Minion trend, which I think came from a really good place. Obviously, people they grew up watching Minions, had to wait so long to watch this movie, and now they want to make a big thing out of it. And I think it was a pretty nice movie. There was fun, good amounts of comedy. The plot was decent. Maybe a step in the right direction for Illumination, because they don't always do that good movies. But yeah, it was pretty good. Next up, we've got White Chicks from 2004. It's about two black FBI men who go undercover as two white girls. Tell me that isn't a funny premise. And I think the highlight of this has to be Terry Crews singing "A Thousand Miles" by Vanessa Carlton. That's really funny. But yeah, it's a pretty funny movie. So yeah, definitely check that one out. Number 120, Spirited, starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Consider this the new take on A Christmas Carol. So it came from this year. It's really new. It's about a miserly man who treats everyone around him with terrible selfishness, and he goes on this fantastical adventure into the three phases of time with Will Ferrell, the Ghost of Christmas Present, the bad man being Ryan Reynolds. And yeah, it's really interesting actually. I can't really speak too much about giving away like the main twist of Will Ferrell's character, but it's pretty good. Just prepare yourself. It is a musical, but I quite enjoy that. Yeah, check it out. It's pretty good. It's one of three Christmas movies Will Ferrell's done, and Will Ferrell goes well with Christmas movies. He really does. And next up, Space Jam: A New Legacy. Okay, so I get a lot of people thought it wasn't as good as the first one, and even then, maybe didn't think the first one was that good. But I prefer this one. It's from 2021, and it's LeBron James, and he teams up with the Looney Tunes cast for a game of basketball. It's the plot we all know before, involving basketball, with a famous basketballer of the time. Except, I think this one's a bit better. It's jammed full of references. I think the plot's a bit better. It's like in the first one, if you really think about it, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, what is the plot of the first Space Jam? But this one, it has a little more to it, a little more structure. But let's be honest, we spent the entire time watching that basketball game just looking to see what characters in the crowd we could recognize. Don't lie to yourself. 118, Surviving Christmas. Okay, so I haven't seen this movie before. It's from 2004. This eccentric millionaire, Ben Affleck, he rents a family to spend Christmas with, but the family don't really like him. They're just sticking around because they've been promised $250,000. But it's quite good, and in the end, they get along, and it's quite nice. It's quite funny as well. 117, Muppets Most Wanted. Well, it's another Muppets movie, so points. Ricky Gervais, points, and a better plot. So a better plot than the first one. So points. That this movie is better than the first one in my opinion, and got some really catchy musical numbers. It's got funny characters. I think Constantine and Ricky Gervais are a really good duo in this one as the villains of the movie. So that's yeah, I think this is probably my favorite Muppet movie that isn't at Christmas. Muppets Christmas Carol is still the best Muppets movie like ever, and you cannot possibly deny that. 116, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So I watched all the Harry Potter movies this year for the first time. I know I got to 19 before I'd watched any of the Harry Potter movies. 18. I was 18. But no, I've watched them all now. I gotta say, as an overall, the series is a bit overrated, but I will get to it each point at a time. But I've put this one lower, Half-Blood Prince. I think I found it less interesting overall. I don't think much really happened in this movie except for in like the last 20 minutes. You know, with Dumbledore and Snape and all that. I don't want to give too much away if people haven't seen it, but at the same time, I'm guessing pretty much everyone has seen these movies by now. But yeah, so Harry learns that Voldemort split his soul and hid the parts in these items called Horcruxes, which he and Dumbledore seek to find so they can destroy the Horcruxes. It's from 2009, by the way. And it's okay. Let's just leave it there before I actually annoy the Potterheads. It's just okay. Next up, Lightyear. This is from this year. It's about the Space Ranger Buzz Lightyear, the one that is like the secondary main character in Toy Story. But it's about his character in the movie that his toy was from. And it's about Buzz Lightyear who seeks his way off of this planet that they crashed on. And they're soon under attack by these alien robots led by Emperor Zurg. And it's pretty decent. the fact that they could cram that much time travel stuff into a movie aimed primarily at kids, that's quite cool. I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, it was pretty solid overall. Gotta say, I actually didn't see the twist of this movie coming. So I always love a good surprise. So that I guess points for that. Next up, we got Fred Claus. Again, if it's Christmas movies, it's quite high up. But in terms of all the movies I've watched, I put it a little lower. Honestly, when you're ranking this many movies, it's so hard to make decisions on what's better than what, especially when it's such different movies. Like, how am I supposed to compare like a Christmas Carol with Rambo? I mean, come on, that's not an easy decision to make. So I put Fred Claus down here, in 114th, which is pretty close to the 100 mark, and it's from 2007. It's about Fred, and he's invited to work with his brother Santa Claus at the North Pole, but he ends up jeopardizing their chances with this efficiency expert who's trying to shut them down. You know, it's Vince Vaughn. It's funny. It's Christmassy. It's everything. It's what you expect from a Christmas movie. Next we got King Kong. Now there's a lot of King Kongs, so for clarification, this is the 2005 King Kong that starred Jack Black. It's a film. It's about a filmmaker who takes his cast to the Lost Skull Island, where they end up encountering King Kong, and this movie's about an hour longer than it needs to be. It's about 3 hours. It's from the same director as Lord of the Rings, so yeah, that explains why it's that long. It's just that the first hour is a bit slow, but if you get past that, it's really good afterwards. And this is the movie that the Skull Island Reign of Kong ride at Universal Islands of Adventure in Orlando is based on and inspired by. So now I've seen this movie, I can appreciate the ride more. But it's a pretty solid movie. Number 112, The Invention of Lying, which stars Ricky Gervais in the 2009 movie as a man in a world where lying doesn't exist until he becomes the first man to tell a lie. How does he become the first man to tell a lie? Well, that's not a plot point to look into. But it's interesting. I mean, it's not just that the people don't lie, they're also just brutally honest. And Ricky Gervais, he ends up down on his luck, and he decides, he somehow gets the ability to lie about how much money's in his bank, and because everyone believes everything's the truth, he gets as much money as he wants. And then his mother is about to die and is worried about going into nothingness, so he lies and tells his mother that there's something after death, and then he creates religion. You can tell Ricky Gervais made this movie, and I think it's quite funny. I think it's an interesting idea, and Ricky Gervais in pretty much anything is funny, so, it's worth a watch. Next up is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the 2010 movie in which Voldemort's forces are looking for Harry while Harry searches for the Horcruxes, and the Horcruxes are nowhere to be found, except they eventually do find them after trekking through a woods for like an hour or something. Look, the movie starts good, and it ends good, but that middle chunk is so slow. Like, it's long and it just drags. It really drags. And I get the fact this first movie handles all the slow stuff means that the second part could be so much better. But really, they could have condensed into one movie, or at least just condensed this movie down a bit more, because it did not need to be that that long. It was so slow in the middle. But the ending was really good. And again, because Harry Potter's been around so long, I know all the spoilers about who does or doesn't die in which movies. And so I did see what was going to happen at the end of this movie coming from like a mile away, but it was still well done. And like, even though I saw it coming, I was still a little surprised, like just because of how it was like, oh, wow, okay. But yeah, this was a good movie in most part. I just think pacing issues. And number 110, Samaritan. It's from 2022. It's about this kid who believes his reclusive neighbor Stallone is a superhero who went missing 25 years ago after this epic fight, and then the kid attempts to coax the Stallone out of retirement. Now, I think this movie, the plot's okay. Stallone carries this movie. Like if this movie didn't have Stallone in, it would not be as high as it is, and it wouldn't be as good as it is because it's mostly just Stallone here. But I think it was an interesting movie. It's quite hard sometimes to make movies about superheroes and whatever that aren't Marvel or DC and then still be good. So points for that. But I think as well, like I kind of guessed the ending, the twist ending coming, but at the same time I was somewhat surprised. But I think it was a really good twist though. Like I saw it coming, but it was a good one, so that's fine. But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's on Amazon Prime if you have that. Number 109, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey one from 2000. This is, in my opinion, this is the Grinch movie. Like this, if you tell me the Grinch, this is the one I'm thinking of. Jim Carrey is the Grinch, and he plans to steal Christmas from the town of Whoville. Whoville. It's a basic plot, and he steals all the gifts, and then he learns that Christmas isn't about the gifts, and then he learns to love Christmas. The plot's basic. It's the story that most people know. Like, even if you haven't seen the movies or read the book, I mean, come on, who hasn't read the book? It's Dr. Seuss. But if you haven't read the book or watched the movies, like, you've still heard of the Grinch. And people still call each other the Grinch sometimes if they're not feeling Christmassy at Christmas time. Like, it's just one of those things and so everyone knows the story. But Jim Carrey is what makes this movie better than any other adaptation. Like, he brings his usual quirkiness and humor to it. That's just what makes this movie as good as it is. And obviously, ranking it with the normal movies is again difficult, and you're gonna get tired of hearing me saying that. But yes, 109. But it's beaten about 60 other movies, so that's not bad. What we got next? Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Okay, so the thing about Harry Potter is the first three movies were like more exciting, but not as dark. They were like more family friendly. And then the later movies were more dark, so had a bit better plot, but then ended up being like dragging in areas. And I feel like this one it didn't feel as like enjoyable to watch. Like I know what my two favorite Harry Potter movies are. And at least with the first ones, like maybe their plots weren't as serious or anything, but they were more fun to watch, I think. But anyway, Order of the Phoenix. This one is 2007. So Harry begins training his army to fight Voldemort while the Ministry of Magic refuses to accept he's returned. So I feel like by the time you get to the end of this movie, not very much has actually happened to progress the overall storyline between all the movies. Like, you've kind of just set the foundation, and that's what 5, 6, and 7 are. It's just slowly building the foundation to build up to Deathly Hallows Part 2. That's pretty much what it is. Number 107, we have Rambo. Now, the Rambo titles are very confusing. The first Rambo movie is just called First Blood. And then it's Rambo First Blood Part 2. And then it's Rambo 3. And then it's John Rambo, or simply Rambo. And then it's Rambo Last Blood. So they're not the easiest to figure out, but so this is the fourth one. And it's from 2008, and it's about John Rambo, Sylvester Stallone. And he leads a group of mercenaries into Burma to save some prisoners of war. And it's action movie. It's a Stallone action movie. You get what you pay for, and I think that's pretty good. Number 106, very likely the oldest movie on my list, Scrooge, A Christmas Carol from 1951. This one, it's the turn of Alastair Sim to play Scrooge in this 1951 adaptation of the story of a man who's visited by the three ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future, who try to convince Scrooge to change his ways or he'll die unhappy and pay for it in the afterlife. It's the Christmas Carol story. We all know it. And I think every adaptation has something about it that kind of makes it its own. But the 1951 adaptation, like, I think this is quite good for 51, to be honest. Like, the effects, it's pretty decent 51. Well, I think the unique point in this one is they added a lot more to the Ghost of Christmas Past and looking into more of Scrooge's past, because normally it stops after the bit where Belle leaves him. But this one, it kept going, and it went as far as the 7 years before it's set to when Marley died. And I think it was, as much as that's not necessarily faithful to the novella, I think it's really interesting just to have like another version where we get to see more of it. And that's kind of a unique point of this version of Christmas Carol. But I think there are other actors who have done Scrooge better and other overall more enjoyable versions. But I do like this version as well, and I like pretty much every version of Christmas Carol. 105, the Gridiron Gang from 2006. It's about this juvenile detention center putting together an American football team to try and get the kids back on the right track. And it stars Dwayne Johnson with hair. That's how old this movie is. Dwayne Johnson has hair and looks a lot younger. And yeah, it's another one of those typical American football movies. It's what you expect, but it's still good though. It's still enjoyable, and that's the thing with those movies. There's a reason there's so many movies that have that kind of formula about sports. It works. It's what people want to watch because it works. And again, this one just works. It's not as good as maybe some of the others, but it does its job. 104, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation from 1989. This is Clark Griswold, played by Chevy Chase, and he's intent on making his family Christmas the best possible, but absolutely nothing goes quite right for him because he has unexpected family come over, his Christmas bonus gets messed up, the house has like a squirrel in it at one point as well, and that causes chaos. Like, literally everything goes wrong. And, I think Chevy Chase is a pretty funny guy. I mostly know him from the TV show Community, in which he was quite funny. But not backstage, though, apparently. But, yeah, so it's one of those, like, classic Christmas movies that most people will watch every year. But, it's comedy, so, but the plot's okay, too. It's a pretty decent movie. It's nothing, like, exemplary. But it's pretty good. It's definitely high up on the Christmas list. That's for sure. Next up we have Wild Hogs. This is 2007. It's about four old friends who go on a motorbike trip, but they actually they attract the attention of a serious biker gang who then want to kill them. It stars John Travolta, Tim Allen, Martin Lawrence, and William H. Macy. Didn't know that last one. And yeah, it's kind of one of those buddy comedy ones a bit, but yeah, it's a pretty fun movie. It's a pretty decent cast lineup too. So I mean, with the cast of John Travolta, Tim Allen, Martin Lawrence, like that's a selling point right there. But yeah, great movie. Next up, 102, Harry Potter and the Stone, the Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone. Whatever one you want to call it. I think it's Philosopher for book and Sorcerer for movie because the Americans probably wouldn't have paid attention to it if it had the word philosopher in, which is what I read, I think was the reason for changing it. But either way, Harry Potter and the Stone from 2001. Harry finds out you're a wizard, and then he attends magic school, in which he uncovers a sought-after stone. And you can decide what the stone's called. Call it the Hagrid Stone. Yeah, so it's pretty fun. Like, it's the first movie, and you can tell they're having fun with it. But you can tell the budget gets bigger as it goes on. You can tell this one's more budget compared to like Deathly Hallows 2 or even Goblet of Fire. But it's still enjoyable, especially when you've then been to the theme park at Universal and you get to see just how similar the sets there are to the movie. Like, you appreciate that a lot more. But yeah, it's a pretty solid movie. It's pretty okay. Next up we got Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas from 1993. It's entirely stop motion animated. It's about the Pumpkin King Jack Skellington who grows tired of Halloween, and once he finds out about Christmas, he tries to take it over and have it as their own thing. But obviously you can imagine Halloween and Christmas don't mix. It's also one of those just classic Christmas movies. And it's a Christmas movie more so than a Halloween movie because it's the Nightmare Before Christmas and it's mostly set at Christmas and it's about Christmas. But it's a good movie. It really is. Short though, but I mean, Imagine how long it would take to make like a 2-hour stop motion movie. Anyway, taking the very nice 100 spot is Spider-Man 3, the one with Bully Maguire. So this is the one where Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire playing Peter Parker, he becomes Bully Maguire. Venom takes over his personality. He's like the symbiote from space that just kind of falls to Earth. The Venom plotline's honestly the main bad thing about this movie. Everything else is fine. And if this Venom kind of takes over his personality and makes him real mean and everything, which is why he threatens to throw dirt in this guy's eye, and then he beats up Goblin Jr. But meanwhile, Spider-Man has to fend off the Sandman, who's actually a good part of this movie, and he has to reconcile with Harry Osborn, who still blames Spider-Man for the death of his father, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. There's a lot of good stuff here in this movie if you just take out the Venom stuff. That's the only bad thing. You know, Sony, they said, oh, we've got to put Venom in that. That's what the kids want. They like Venom. But if they just stuck to Sandman and Goblin, I think this movie could have been really good, actually. And it would have made the whole first trilogy, like, one of the best trilogies ever. But because we have Venom, we have the reason that Spider-Man 3 is not as good as the others, and just the first of the two occasions when Sony has a character dance terribly. But it's iconic, you know. You can get some fun out of it. Number 99 is Home Alone. Yes, it's one of the best Christmas movies, but when you compare it to the other movies, you know. It's from 1919. It's about a boy who's left home alone. He has to fend off burglars with his inventive booby traps. And, you know, there's not much Christmassy about that if you think about it. But it's set at Christmas, and these two kind of knucklehead burglars are trying to break in because he lives in this really rich mansion and he's home alone. And he sets up all these funny traps that end up massively harming the burglars. And you know, that's funny to watch. Let's face it, we all just want to see someone get hit in the face with an iron or slip on some ice comedically. And it's a fun movie. It really is. The second movie's pretty good too. I didn't get around to watching it this previous year. You can ditch the rest of the Home Alone movies. 98, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Okay, Chamber of Secrets. Chamber of Secrets. This was 2002. It's about Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to figure out who's accessing the Chamber of Secrets and attacking the students of Hogwarts. I think what makes this one better than the first one is it does kind of have that mystery whodunit kind of thing to it of what's going on. And I think it was better overall as a movie. Like, the first movie was more about settling into Hogwarts, whereas this one is more about actually, like, we can have a plot now. We've done that. We've done the groundwork. Now we can make something decent. So yeah, here we go. 98, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. When you get to, like, my highest rated Harry Potter movie, you're going to realize that these are spread over quite a large range on my list, because there's quite a large range in quality between them, in my opinion. 97, Deck the Halls. 2006 movie about Danny DeVito, his character Buddy Hall. He moves into this neighborhood and he wants to create a Christmas light show that can be seen from space, which inconveniences his neighbor greatly. His neighbor Matthew Broderick, famous for, I believe, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And it's Danny DeVito. He's a funny man. I mean, just look at him. He's a funny man. And, you know, anything with him in it is going to be pretty funny. But this is one of my favorite Christmas movies. And, you know, I'm not going to say just because of Danny DeVito, but that does help. He's a great guy, honestly. But it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it already. Alright, next we've got Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So this one's 2004. It's about Sirius Black. He escapes Azkaban, and Hogwarts is surrounded by these Dementors, which suck your soul out. But is Sirius actually guilty of his crimes? And that's what Harry has to find out. And, you know, I think that's what makes this one interesting as well, is you've got a lot more stakes in this one. So I think this one's more interesting than some of the other movies. And it's kind of the start of going from the fun side of the Harry Potter world to the darker side. And but without being the one where it just stretches for ages because nothing happens. So I think this is a better one up there. All right, we're at the hour mark now, and we're on 95 out of 168. So I think we're even halfway yet, are we? 84 will be halfway. Scrooged. Scrooged is number 95, and Scrooged is from 1988. It's about Frank Cross, played by Mr. Bill Murray. He's a ruthless TV executive, and he's visited by the ghost of Christmas. And while he is working as a TV executive, he's making the production of A Christmas Carol. And he's essentially a similar character to Scrooge, but in a more modern setting. Well, modern for the 80s, that is. But it's still a great take on the movie. It's always nice to see unique, different adaptations of the story that we all know. But so yeah, it's definitely high up on the Christmas list again. But yeah, I mean, next up we've got probably one of the best, most faithful versions to the original story, A Christmas Carol from 1984. This one stars George C. Scott playing Ebenezer Scrooge, and he's the stingy miser who's visited by the three ghosts who seek to grant him redemption. And I think George C. Scott might be the best Scrooge actor out of any adaptation. He does it really well. And I mean, the effects might not be as splendid as the effects these days. I mean, sure, it looks dated, like it's 84, but I think this is probably one of the best versions, if not the best traditional version of A Christmas Carol. 93, Violent Night. This movie was such a pleasure to watch. Violent Night, 2022. Terrorists break into a rich family's mansion on Christmas Eve and hold them hostage while trying to crack a $300 million vault. And the only one who can save them is Santa and his sledgehammer. Imagine Die Hard, but instead of John McClane, it's Santa, and instead of the terrorists in the Nakatomi Plaza, it's terrorists in the house. And now imagine that in the house there's also a kid who's pulling Home Alone stunts on the terrorists. And then give Santa a sledgehammer. This movie is just... its own kind of brilliance. Like, in all other movies that are like Die Hard, you'll just say it's a Die Hard ripoff. Like, you know, Speed, Die Hard on a bus. Speed 2, Cruise Control, Die Hard on a boat. Sudden Death, Die Hard in an ice hockey stadium. A Skyscraper, Die Hard but no terrorists. You know, there's so many movies that just want to be Die Hard. But this movie, you don't just think straight away it's a Die Hard kind of knockoff. And it's David Harbour, from probably best known from Stranger Things now as Hopper. He's really good as Santa, and this is just such a fun movie. I mean, there's just a whole scene set to something about Christmas time, in which Santa is brutally, like, mercilessly killing all these terrorists with the sledgehammer, just bashing their heads in. It's just so much fun, honestly. Like, this is definitely one I'm going to be watching again next Christmas for sure. I definitely recommend it. 92, okay, it's 92, 91, and 90, the three Lord of the Rings movies. And so the first one on my list is The Fellowship of the Ring, the first one from 2001, which is about this hobbit and 8 companions. They set out on a journey to destroy the powerful One Ring and save Middle-earth from the Dark Lord Sauron, who is now an eye for some reason. I don't know if they ever explained why Sauron is just an eye. I'm hoping that's the kind of thing the Rings of Power will go over. But the Lord of the Rings movies, like, they're all pretty much on par with each other, except I think this is the weakest one because it doesn't have a massive battle scene in it. So, like, that's why this one is lower. But because they're all so similar level, I've put them all consecutively. So the next one, as you might expect, 91, is The Two Towers. And then number 90 is The Return of the King. So The Two Towers from 2002 is, while Frodo and Sam edge closer to Mordor with the help of the shifty Gollum, the divided fellowship makes the stand against Sauron's new ally Saruman and his hordes of Isengard. There's a lot of words. There's a lot of new words to say. And then Return of the King, 2003. Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring. And all I'm going to say is there's an extended version of Return of the King, which is like an extra hour or so, and nothing really happens in the extra hour. Just watch the regular version. But these three movies, they're pretty solid as a trilogy. Just be prepared that you're going to have to give up about 3 hours of your life for each one. Average. Because they're quite long. But other than that, they're good movies. Number 89, Elf. Again, this is definitely one of like the top 3 best Christmas movies. It's just that there's all these other movies I like as well, and just I've seen this one so many times now that the enjoyment, it's decreasing marginal return. It's and you know, Christmas movie, regular movies, integrating them isn't easy. But like Elf 2003, it's about this human, Will Ferrell, and he's raised by elves, and he leaves the North Pole to visit his father in New York, who doesn't know he exists. And it's just it's such a fun movie, and it's really captures the Christmas spirit so well. And it's like it's so memorable. There's so much to remember from it. So many scenes, so many funny bits, lines, everything. So you know, Elf. It's definitely like it's quite possibly the best Christmas movie. Like my favorite Christmas movie is an Elf. It's a different one, but this is possibly the better movie, and this is quite likely the best Christmas movie. But in terms of my enjoyment of watching it this year, there are certainly other movies I've enjoyed watching more this year because either I haven't seen them before, or just nostalgia, or just I enjoy worse movies more sometimes. So yeah, I put this a bit low, and I realised that. But there are some really good movies up on this list, though. That said, Bionicle 2: Legends of Metru Nui is on 88, and I realised the picture's the Spanish version. Yeah, this is the second movie in the Bionicle trilogy I was talking about. This one ranks a lot higher for me. It's from 2004, and it's about these 6 Matoran who become Toa to protect Metru Nui from Makuta, Pterodax. And this is the first one I saw, and so like I got the big nostalgia for this one. I mean, yeah, it's 2004 animation of Lego characters, so like it might look a bit like dated, but it is quite fun. Maybe not the best movie. I think the soundtrack's pretty neat. Like I can listen to the DVD menu theme all day. Honestly, it's such a nice piece. But it's just the nostalgia again. It's been a good few years since I've watched the Bionicle movies. To watch them again this previous year was just memories come flooding back. 87, we've got Sonic the Hedgehog. Not Sonic's first appearance on this list, because obviously I mentioned Ugly Sonic earlier from Chip and Dale. Sonic the Hedgehog from 2020 is about Sonic, and he needs to find his rings while running away from Dr. Eggman. Robotnik, he's not Eggman yet. Dr. Robotnik, played brilliantly by Jim Carrey. And Sonic voiced by Ben Schwartz, who channels his inner Jean-Ralphio from Parks and Rec. I think, though, that there's not actually that much here that, like, things like they're doing the Mario movie, and there's so much in the trailers already that references all the Mario games and whatnot. And then Sonic 2 had so many references to Sonic games. This one lacks in references. Obviously, you got the rings, which I didn't know could ever be used to teleport like that, but I'm still relatively new to Sonic. It's got Robotnik, but he doesn't look like Eggman at all. And it's got Green Hills. Not Green Hill Zone, but Green Hills, and that's close enough. But other than that, there's not really that much linking it to Sonic, except for maybe the echidnas at the start. But it does well as its own standalone thing, and obviously Sonic has always struggled to balance the line between cool and cringe in his games and movies. And the fact that there's been flossing in both movies is just tragic. But I think this movie does pretty good, and it sets up the second movie, which is much better. So there you go, 87, Sonic the Hedgehog. 86, Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. if memory serves me right, this might have been the first movie I watched this year. It was. This was the very first movie I watched in 2022. And I think it's possibly outdoes its predecessor of Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. This one's really funny. And the cast is great. I mean, you got Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, and Dave, what's his surname? I can never pronounce it. Koshner or something. But the four of them, this is a funny movie. It's really is. And I think the highlight, again, same with the first movie, is just when all the different newscasting teams all have the giant fight with loads of weapons and everything, and it's just absolute chaos. Like, I want to see more of that kind of stuff. Like, honestly, but Will Ferrell, man, he's just great in everything he does, and Steve Carell, honestly, like, so this is a good movie, and the fact that this still maintains so high on my list, even though it's been over a year since I've watched it now, that means it must have been pretty good. 85, Mortal Kombat from 2021. Champions of Earth defend their planet in Mortal Kombat. Now, if you're watching a movie called Mortal Kombat, you're not watching it for the plot. You're watching it for the combat, right? Because, you know, you're expecting a video game adaptation movie, which have often been not very good. I mean, look at the 90s. But this one does good, and it gives us something of a plot as well. And it doesn't hold back with the combat. The fatalities are there. I think the best one is, I believe when Kung Lao does a fatality using his hat to slice another person in half, vertically down the middle. And the fight with Sub-Zero and Scorpion, both at the start of the movie, but also mostly at the end of the movie, is really good as well. So I think there's some good stuff in here, and I can't wait to see the sequel. But the real question is, who's playing Johnny Cage? That's what I want to know about the sequel. But hey, good movie. Good video game adaptation movie. I think in the 2010s and 2020s, they finally figured out how to do good video game movies. Which is good, because we don't need more of that 90s stuff. I heard the 90s Mortal Kombat movies were terrible. Especially the second one. On to the next one. 84, The Expendables 2. This is my favourite Expendables movie. It's from 2012. And it's the same all-star cast, and they team up to deliver epic kills, and they take on the antagonist, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I need to say a few points of this movie I really like. My favorite part, so one of my favorite parts is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis, and they're fighting off a bunch of bad guys. And Arnold says, "I'll be back," and Bruce Willis says, "No, you've been back enough. I'll be back." And then he goes out and kills a bunch of people. And then Arnold says, "Yippee-ki-yay," like Bruce Willis did in Die Hard. Another one is Jason Statham. He's in like this kind of like church room or something, and he says, "I now pronounce you husband a knife," and he knives these guys. And I think the best part, and this is probably the most badass kill I've seen in any movie, Jean-Claude Van Damme roundhouse kicks a dagger through a guy's heart. That is so cool, honestly. Just the precision and the smoothness of it. That is dope. See, Expendables 2 is like the highlight of the series for me. It's got the best cast, and the kills are just so epic, honestly. Like, this is essentially just an homage to the 80s and 90s action movies that these stars used to be in, and I honestly, this movie was so much fun. Alright, 83, 82, 81, 80, and 79 are all the Final Destination movies. And because they're such similar movies, like literally the premise doesn't change. It's just the way the people die changes, and the way that they avoid death at the start changes. But Final Destination 2 is the lowest for me. It's from 2003. And this kid has a premonition that saves this group of people from the highway pileup. But death doesn't like to be cheated, and they start dying one by one in extreme ways. Final Destination 5 from 2011. A man's premonition saves a group from a suspension bridge collapse, but death doesn't like to be cheated, and they start dying one by one in extreme ways. Final Destination 1, 2000. A kid's premonition saves a group from a plane explosion, but death doesn't like to be cheated, and they start dying one by one in extreme ways. Final Destination 4, The Final Destination, from 2009. A kid's premonition saves a group from a speedway racing crash, but death doesn't like to be cheated, and they start dying one by one in extreme ways. And Finally, top of the list of Final Destinations, Final Destination 3 from 2006. A kid's premonition saves a group from a roller coaster crash, but death doesn't like to be cheated, and they start dying one by one in extreme ways. As you can tell, these are very similar movies. But I think number 3 being top for me is because I love roller coasters, and going on the Smiler after watching this movie was a bad idea. But yeah, so I love roller coasters, so that was a good setup. And I think the deaths and the way of trying to figure out the deaths is more interesting in this movie. Because in every movie, there's a different way to figure out how the next person's going to die. In the first movie, it was merely premonitions, much like the initial way they got out of death. In this one, it's that the girl who had the premonition, she took pictures of her classmates on that day, and the people die in the order of the pictures. No, in the order of where they were sitting on the roller coaster. So front row first, then the next row, then the next row. And then the clue to how they were going to die was in the pictures. And I thought that was really cool. So I think what was quite interesting in, I think it was the fifth one, was that they decided that you can't avoid dying. I mean, you can figure out how it's going to happen, but you can't avoid it. So you have to kill someone else and take their spot in life. But I think number 3 did it best, in my opinion. Obviously, they're such close movies, you can rank them any way you want. No one's going to dispute it. They're all so similar. But the thing is, with the deaths, the deaths are what is really different between each movie, and it keeps the movies feeling fresh and unique, even though you just watch the same plot unfold 5 times. But, you know, so I think the fact that they can do that and reuse this exact same plot just with changing a few elements of it shows it's really good. And while they're technically classed as horror, there's nothing overly scary about it. Like, there's no scary killers or, like, jump scares or whatever. It's just that the premise itself is a bit scary, like, you know, death. But, yes, these movies are good, so I would recommend them, definitely. 78, Moonfall, from 2022. This is about the moon, which is apparently a megastructure, which is attacked by this unknown entity, and then it starts falling towards Earth, creating the very stereotypical disaster movies. And I think this one was interesting. And while I don't know if there's any actual plausibility to the megastructure theory of the moon, because obviously they got this idea from the actual theory that the moon's a megastructure, I think it's just, if you don't actually think too deeply into the science, I think this is quite a fun movie. It does disaster movie well, and the ending surprised me, to say the least. It surprised me, and, you know, good job. Good job, guys. 77, Freaky. I watched this one after Halloween Horror Nights, because I couldn't watch it before, because they had a house based on Freaky. And it's from 2020. It's about this teenage girl and a serial killer who do the whole body swap routine, and they have 24 hours to kill the other before the change becomes permanent. So it's quite interesting. It takes the body swap thing, and it adds the layer of serial killer to it, and, you know, it goes well. So, you know, it's a good movie. 76, School of Rock. Jack Black. Need I say more? 2003, Jack Black plays a substitute teacher, quote unquote. He wasn't an actual teacher, he just needed the money, who turns his class into a rock band to enter the Battle of the Bands. And Jack Black, need I say any more? Number 75, Zookeeper, 2011. These talking zoo animals help their zookeeper Griffin, played by Kevin James, to find love again, while also trying to remain unheard by the public. I think this is, to me, this is most memorable by Kevin James and a gorilla singing apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur. Just, honestly, like, that's just, it's Kevin James, and I'm a sucker for any movie Kevin James is in, because he's a funny guy. He really is. I don't know what happened to Adam Sandler and Kevin James and why you don't see them more anymore. Like, everyone just decided that they're not doing their movies anymore, but they were funny. And this is peak Kevin James. So, you know, definitely watch it. 74, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Now, I think this is a mostly good movie. It's probably one of the better movies of Phase 4 in Marvel's MCU. So it's from this year. It's only a couple of months ago. And the death of King T'Challa, obviously because of the death of Chadwick Boseman, which was tragic, leaves Wakanda unprotected when Namor surfaces with an army to take over the surface world. Namor is basically Aquaman, but Marvel and kind of an anti-hero. So he's more of a villain in this one, but in the comics, he's kind of an anti-hero. But I think this one does a lot of good things. I think the only thing is that I don't 100% agree with how they did T'Challa's death. I get they wanted to make it like how the actor died, and I get that. It's a nice tribute to him. But I don't think it served his character well, because I feel like his character, like the Black Panther, I feel like he should have died in battle or something, rather than just suddenly dying. But other than that, I think this movie, there's not much to fault. Besides just that, this is a pretty decent movie. Next up, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now tell me the first thing you didn't think was, Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? Dumbledore said calmly. But Goblet of Fire, despite the meme, is my second favourite Harry Potter movie. It's from 2005, and Harry, he's entered into this competition in which he has to compete in these 3 challenges. His name gets put in the Goblet of Fire. And I think this movie is probably most memorable for Dumbledore said calmly, but also the death of Cedric Diggory, which was Robert Pattinson. And I think this was the first movie where you realise, damn, Voldemort's an actual threat. Because you actually get to see him in this movie, like in his kind of true form. Whereas in other movies, you didn't. So this was kind of like the first time you really got to see him. And I think the fact that you didn't see him properly until the 4th movie, but he still managed to instill so much fear in the characters throughout all of the movies, just goes to show how good a villain he is. And I think because this is the first one where they actually like properly killed off the character, I mean excluding Harry Potter's parents, like this is the first movie they properly killed off the character, and you know they brought Voldemort in, and it was kind of a start of turning towards the darker stuff. I think this movie was much better. 72, Red Notice. Remember when I said earlier when I was talking about Uncharted that it wasn't as good a duo as Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds? This is why. Additionally, Gal Gadot is there as well, but you know. But yeah, Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds, like that is a good team up. It's another one of those kind of heist/treasure hunt movies. It's pretty formulaic, but it's fun, and I think that is mostly down to the actors in the movie rather than a premise. Because I think with movies like Uncharted and Red Notice and any other similar movie, because they're all so similar and the plots aren't going to be that much better than each other, it's down to who the actors are. And I think Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds are better than Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland. If you don't agree, that's fine, but that's where I'm going with this. 71, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It's from 2021. It's about Eddie Brock and Venom, and they face off against a serial killer, Cletus Cassidy, and his symbiote counterpart, Carnage. Now, this movie, I don't think it got the best reviews, and I think, if anything, it's a little too short. It could have done with a bit more time to, like, properly flesh out the plot. But I think it was a good movie, and I enjoyed it, and I liked kind of like the sort of twisted love story between Cletus Cassidy and, what's her name? Yeah, I forgot her name. But Cletus Cassidy, he loves this girl who has, like, sound powers, which obviously hurts Carnage. So Carnage wants her dead, Cletus wants to marry her, and they kind of have their own internal struggle about that, which obviously leaves them weak to Venom and Eddie Brock taking him down. I think Tom Hardy is a much better Venom than the guy who did Spider-Man 3. That's for certain. But I think there's a lot of good points in this movie. It's short. It's too short, and it needs to be expanded a bit more. And in the end, it kind of just became, it's a monster fighting a monster, Venom versus Carnage. And if I want to see monster versus monster, I'll just go watch Godzilla versus Kong or something. But overall, I think this is a good movie, and there's a lot of good stuff there. It needed a bit more on it. Number 70, Scream 2. Now, the Scream movies, I haven't clumped all together next to each other because I think there's a significant difference in how good some of them are. But they're all good. I think Scream 2 is the lowest for me because I think the reveal of Ghostface in this one just wasn't as good as the other reveals. Scream 2, 1997. It's the premiere of a movie based on Scream is interrupted by the return of Ghostface, and he murders somebody. And the Ghostface is after Sydney again. So, but you have to figure out who Ghostface is, and that's kind of the selling point of the Scream movies. It's a horror, but it's also a mystery. It's a whodunit, and it's always been quite fun trying to figure out who it was. And I usually get it wrong. Definitely did this time, but it's definitely worth watching all the Scream movies. They're all very good. But this one I think is a little lower for me, purely just because the Ghostface reveal just wasn't as good. Oh, and Randy, man, he was such a good character. 69, The Adam Project. I'm going to be 100% honest, I don't actually remember this movie very well. I think it came out near the start of 2022. But there must be a reason I've left it so high up. So Ryan Reynolds, he goes back in time to 2022, and he teams up with his 12-year-old self to stop time travel from being created. Yep, okay, that sounds good. And I think I remember it being pretty decent. It's not perfect, like, as soon as you bring time travel into it, you're asking for inconsistencies, but I think it's pretty good. So, you know, it's up there. And I trust my past self's judgment of leaving it that high on the list. 68, Halloween Kills, 2021. Directly after the events of Halloween 2018, the town of Haddonfield try to rally themselves to all fight the once again escaped and murderous Michael Myers. Yeah, he broke out again. And yeah, I think this one's really interesting. It continues straight on from the previous one, and in a way there's a sense of irony to it that the people of Haddonfield become the monster themselves and just start accusing anybody of being Michael Myers and start trying to attack them, and it's while they're completely blind to where the actual Michael Myers is. But I think the best part is when the entire mob tries to beat up the real Michael Myers. I mean, he just gets back up and starts killing. Because honestly, that's proof that Michael Myers is a really good character. But again, I still want to know why he can survive all of that. So again, it's not a completely solid plot, but I think it's an improvement on the previous Halloween, because there's more depth to it, and it's not just like a rehash of the first one. So you know, I think every time you get a bit more knowledge of Michael Myers, and I think it becomes better as it goes on. 67, Ratatouille. Yeah, I rewatched Ratatouille. It's quite an old movie. It's 2007. Not as old as I thought. Remy the rat, he dreams of being a chef in Paris, and he uses his human, Linguini, to make food and restore the reputation of his favourite chef's restaurant, Chef Gusteau. I think it's a nice story, and obviously it's got the message of anyone can cook. Not anyone should cook, but anyone can be a cook if they want to, and I think the message translates to anything, really, that you can do it if you really want to. And I mean, it's a nice movie as well. I mean, if you don't stop to think about the idea of a rat in your kitchen being disgusting. But I think it's a nice movie, definitely. It was fun to watch it again, because I feel like it's probably been at least a decade since I've seen it, to be honest. It's been such a long time. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. It's one of those classic Pixar movies. 'Cause, you know, Pixar movies back in the day, like, you knew they were going to be good. 66, Happy Gilmore from 1996. It's about this failed hockey player who takes up golf, Adam Sandler, and he has anger issues. And if there's anything I know about golf, being someone who likes to play golf, is you cannot be angry while playing golf. It'll mess up your whole game. But Adam Sandler, being a hockey player in this, he has a really good drive. So he gets into the golf tournament, and his very unorthodox style kind of ruffles some feathers with the current champ Shooter McGavin. And I think there's a lot of funny stuff in here as well. But you know, Adam Sandler obviously is a funny guy, so it's definitely worth a watch. Like, even if you think, oh, golf, that's kind of boring. It's first of all, golf is quite fun, but secondly, this movie is definitely really enjoyable, so it's worth a watch. Continuing with the Adam Sandler run, 65, The Longest Yard. It's from 2005. It's about this disgraced NFL star who ends up in prison, and he throws together this team of inmates to play football against the guards team. So starring Adam Sandler and a very long list of WWE wrestlers. And is that Chris Rock? Um, but yeah, there's a good cast in here. I think Steve Austin's in it as well. Yeah, so it's the kind of it's your typical get the underdog team of NFL players who don't get along to play a game of football, but against prison guards who have been constantly getting on the prisoner's nerves and like putting him down and everything. So it's got kind of like that uniqueness compared to any other college football movie kind of thing. So I think that's what does it, as well as the fact that it's funny. It's Adam Sandler. Come on. So that's definitely why it's higher up on my list. 64, The Truman Show. I think this is a really good premise. So 1998, Jim Carrey is a regular guy, but he doesn't know that his entire life is filmed, and he's the star of a completely immersive reality show. Imagine that in real life. That'd be insane. But yeah, I think the Truman Show is really good premise. I mean, yeah, it's really good premise. It's just that I don't feel like it was the most interesting all the way through. Because I think obviously because he's living an everyday life that everyone's watching, I think to begin with it starts off a bit slow. But as he starts to realize something's wrong, and that something just isn't quite right. I mean, specifically when it rains specifically just on the spot he's in and nowhere else. It's like, hang on. But he starts to realize stuff is wrong, like his killed off father comes back, and like that's where it gets interesting. And he's trying to escape to the real world. So yeah, I think it's a good movie. Definitely worth watching. 63, Up. Up is a 2009 movie about an old man who sets out to achieve his wife's dream and flies his house to Paradise Falls, unintentionally accompanied by a Boy Scout. I think it's a really nice movie, but I think it's the first 10 minutes of the movie that's the strongest, and then in the end it's quite strong as well, and it's just kind of this lesson of the man just has to learn to like let his wife go, and he sort of almost finds family with this boy and a talking dog, and I think it's just a really nice movie. Next up, we got 62, Spider-Man: Homecoming from 2017. It's the first outing for Tom Holland as Spider-Man as he suits up to face the Vulture, Michael Keaton, who's hopped from DC to MCU, and I think it's pretty okay. I'd say it's the weakest of the MCU Spider-Man. There's not really much more for me to say on that one. 61, Batman Begins. 2005, Christian Bale's Batman takes on Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow in the first installment of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I think the reason this one doesn't seem as good is because you're comparing it to The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, and you think, yeah, no, not as good. But it is good in its own right. It's just that The Dark Knight is so much better. It really is. And I think it's good. I mean, like a different Batman origin movie. Like they did some different stuff with it and everything, and Nolan did a really good job with the trilogy. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man from 2012. Now I know that obviously Andrew Garfield, he didn't get a third movie in his series, but this is his first one. He becomes Spider-Man. He battles the Lizard to save New York from being turned into more lizards. And I think that's kind of the pitfall for it. But I think Andrew Garfield does a really good job as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And I think Gwen Stacy's really good as well. And I think those two kind of carry both movies for me. But yeah, it's with the exception of Homecoming and Spider-Man 3, I don't think it's as good as the other ones. 59, Ghostbusters Afterlife, 2021. So remember Egon from the first Ghostbusters? His granddaughter is in this one, and she stumbles across paranormal activity and has to fend off a returning Gozer with a new set of Ghostbusters, including Paul Rudd. And I think this is the Ghostbusters 2 we needed. we got Ghostbusters 2, and it was okay. It's not as good as the first one. It's not as good as this one. And then we had, what was it, 2016 or something? We had the Ghostbusters remake with the all-women cast that just, it wasn't as good. And I think most people just try to forget about that one now. And I quite enjoy that in this movie they like completely made it clear that that other one is not canon. But in this timeline. But I think this is the next best Ghostbusters movie after the first one. So to me, this is the second Ghostbusters movie. We can ditch the others. It's pretty solid. 58, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. There are ups and downs in this movie. 2014, Andrew Garfield returns as Spider-Man. He takes on Electro and Harry Osborn's Green Goblin. First of all, Electro, I'm mixed on Electro because on the one hand, he's sort of okay backstory-wise, but on the other hand, it doesn't look quite right as Electro. And just the way he seems kind of dumbed down as a character, he gets used by other characters. I don't know what Rhino was doing in this movie, honestly. But Andrew Garfield and then Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, they do good again. Harry Osborn's Green Goblin, okay. I don't think he's as good as I think he's like, it's hard to say what he is because like they just shoved him in so they could do the particular comic book storyline involving Gwen Stacy, which I think worked well, but I don't think this version of Harry Osborn's Green Goblin worked well. The plot point he was used for was good, but him himself, no. But so this is kind of mixed, but I think I actually preferred this over the first Amazing Spider-Man. 57, we're getting there. Scream 5, or just Scream. This one is from, would you believe it, 2022. There's a new killer wearing the ghost face mask, and he's targeting the characters from the previous films and their descendants. So who's the ghost face? And that's always the fun. Who's the ghost face? That's why you watch these movies. And I quite like how self-aware these movies are. Like the meta, and this one takes a lot of points from the earlier movies, and obviously carries forward some of the characters. But also does its own thing as well, because it's more of a, is it a reboot or a requel? We don't even know anymore. But it's interesting, and I'm going to be excited to watch the Scream movie that comes out this year in, I want to say it was March. So yeah, it'd be great to see another Scream movie, because these movies are really good. 56, Jurassic World Dominion. I think there's been mixed reviews, but I think this is a good Jurassic World movie. I say this is my number 3 in the overall series. Number 1 is obviously the first Jurassic Park movie, and I don't think anyone can really debate that. And then second for me is Jurassic World, and then third is this one. If you're interested, fourth is probably Lost World Jurassic Park, 5 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and 6 is Jurassic Park 3. Because no Ian Malcolm. And, but yeah, this one's good. I think it does a good job of combining both the new era and old era of actors from the movies. So it's from this year, it's the cast of the original Jurassic Park movies and the newer Jurassic World movies. They team up to save, the world, which is now full of dinosaurs. And I think there's a lot of interesting plot in this one, and so it always seems weird though, because anytime they do a Jurassic Park or World movie that isn't set in the park, it's never as good. But I think this one did an okay job of it, and it's it's good. It's good. 55, Grown Ups 2. Now, I love me a good comedy. I love a good Adam Sandler movie, and I love a good Gavin James movie. So when they put the two of them together, this is good sign. And Grown Ups 2 from 2013 is about Lenny Fader, Adam Sandler, and he moves back to his hometown and he throws this town-wide party with his friends. And it's one of those movies where not much happens overall plot-wise, but you're just watching it just to see a bunch of friends having fun and doing funny stuff. Like, seeing a guy in a tire rolling down steep hills is funny. So, I don't think it's as good as the first one, like, just about. but it's still fun. It's a good time. 54, Soul, 2020. I hadn't seen this movie before, and I watched it, and I thought, you know what, this is pretty decent. So after landing the gig of a lifetime, a New York jazz pianist suddenly finds himself trapped in a strange land between Earth and the afterlife. I think that's quite interesting. I think it explores like some interesting ideas of the soul, and was that pre-mortal life as well that they were exploring? That's some complicated stuff. But I think this is a good movie. It's not you can't guarantee a Pixar movie these days is going to be a surefire hit like back in the old days, but this one I think is pretty good. 53, Inside Out. This movie really goes into how your mind works in a unique and more easily palatable for kids way, and I think that's something that really benefits it. That's a really strong point of it. 2015. San Francisco Riley is uprooted from her Midwest life and moved to San Francisco. Her emotions in her head start conflicting on how to navigate this new life, new city, new house, new school. And so joy and sadness, they get a little sidetracked trying to restore some core memories while leaving only fear, anger, and disgust to run the girl's emotions, which is a bad combo. But the lesson really is that you can't just have joy all the time and that sadness is important, though joy initially tries to make sadness seem unimportant. I think the cast is like, I didn't realize there was people from Parks and Rec and The Office in this, but yeah. And you want me to stir up some real sadness for you? Bing Bong. Yeah, that was actually like, you don't expect to feel as bad as you do when you see that, but you know, if you know, you know. 52, Encanto. I'm gonna be honest, I had a lot of reservations about watching this. Like, I wasn't sure if I was gonna watch it. Uh, Obviously, I'd heard people talking about not talking about Bruno, which is kind of counterintuitive. But you know what? I was on the plane to Florida, and my math teacher had told me you should watch Encanto. It's pretty good. So I watched it, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it, and I wasn't sure if I was going to, because I thought, is this going to be like Frozen again, where it's like a really overrated movie with a song everyone talks about, and it's actually not going to be good? But I enjoyed this one. I thought it was quite an interesting story, and the musical numbers were catchy, and okay, maybe We Don't Talk About Bruno is as good as they say. Um, but we don't talk about Bruno. No, no. 51, The Muppets Christmas Carol. It's a Christmas Carol, but with the Muppets. So it's not quite your traditional Christmas Carol, and obviously they took out a lot of sadder and darker elements of the initial novella to cope with the fact that there's going to be a child audience watching the Muppets. So I watched the original full cut, which has an extra 3 minutes, including a song that Belle sings when breaking up with Scrooge, which they initially then took out because they thought it was too sad for children watching. And I think, well, it's not much extra, but I think it's a good song and it adds the level to it. But either way, Muppets Christmas Carol, 1992, would you believe? Michael Caine plays Scrooge, Kermit the Frog is Bob Cratchit, and it's a Muppet version of A Christmas Carol. That is all there is to it. But it's full of songs, and it's got its usual Muppet style, and that makes it good, makes it enjoyable. And Caine does a fair job of being Scrooge himself, like even though he's in a completely different setting to other Scrooges who don't have to deal with the fact they're working with puppets. Michael Caine still does a good job making his role serious. Number 50. We're in the top 50 now, we're getting there. Batman. And this is Batman from 1989. And Michael Keaton's Batman faces off against Jack Nicholson's Joker in the first of the two Tim Burton Batman movies. And this is iconic, honestly. Yeah, it's iconic. It really is. Michael Keaton does a good job. Jack Nicholson does a really good job. I mean, it's just the fact that other Jokers have been even better, but you can't let that kind of displace how good Jack Nicholson also was. Especially for the time, obviously, because when Jack Nicholson did the Joker, the only previous Joker was Cesar Romero from the 60s, who refused to shave his mustache. so he just painted over it. Like, you didn't have Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix Jokers yet. So obviously, for the time, this was the best one. Now we have Heath Ledger, we might look back at Nicholson and think he's not as good, but he's still really good. It's just Heath Ledger was really, really good. But this is a good movie, and it still holds up relatively well. And the soundtrack's pretty iconic too. 49, Shrek. Shrek. 2001. Shrek is probably one of the most well-known animated movies. It's about an ogre called Shrek, and he delivers Princess Fiona to Lord Farquaad in a bid to get his swamp back, but then he falls in love with Fiona. I mean, it's Shrek. I don't need to tell you about Shrek. You know about Shrek, and Shrek is a good movie. You know why it's here. 48, Cool Runnings. For the description of this movie, I have, it's from 1993. Jamaica, we have a bobsled team. They got the one Darius, the one Junior, Yul Brenner, and Sanka. They're the four-man Jamaican bobsled team, led by Coach Irv Blitzer. And, it's based on the true story of the Jamaican bobsled team who went to the Olympics and did bobsled, even though they're from Jamaica. And it's a funny movie, but it's also one of those kind of like heartwarming sport movies, Eddie the Eagle kind of thing. And it's a fun one. I come back to it every now and then. 47, Shrek 2. Shrek 2, in my opinion, is better than number 1. And this isn't because of my bias that a Counting Crows song is in the first, 15 minutes of the movie. Though that does help. I think Shrek 2 is better. Because I think it has the better story. I think it has the better villain. And I think the finale is better. And honestly, that holding out for a hero bit was good. It was good. And I think Shrek 2 is the best of the series. And so you'll probably figured out I didn't watch the fourth one this year that just passed. But yeah, Shrek 2, top of the series for me. And I don't need to tell you much else. You've probably seen it. 46, Aliens. That 80s classic movie, Aliens, from 1986. Aliens. Multiple aliens. Instead of just one, there's more of them. And so Ripley and a group of Marines are sent to a colonized planet to eradicate aliens. You get what you pay for. But it's good. It's real good. It's classic 80s horror action sci-fi. Aliens. That's all there is to it. Aliens. And it's just people with guns fighting aliens. 45, RoboCop. Another 80s throwback. 1987, an officer, Murphy, is fatally wounded, and he's revived as the cyborg RoboCop, and he seeks out his killers, while also unveiling corruption, which is an interesting plot point, because obviously police corruption is quite often both a real thing, but also gone over in movies as well. So yeah, RoboCop, and I think if you excuse the terrible, awful green screen at the end of the movie when the guy's falling out of the skyscraper, and you could tell the background's just printed on. He's just there like, I'm falling. That's terrible CGI. But if you look past that, I mean, it was the 80s. You can forgive them for this. Look past that, it's a really good movie. It's a bit brutal in places, especially for 80s standards. But yeah, it's a good movie. 44 is another 4, Scream 4. And this one is about Sydney returning to Woodsboro. Movies from 2011, by the way. And her return to Woodsboro brings about the return of Ghostface. And it's a new killer with a grudge against Sydney, who begins another stabbing spree. So it's the same as before, but also not the same as before. There's a different person in the Scream mask. And I think this is the one where they did try and, sort of remake the first one in this one. I get 4 and 5 mixed up a little, but they're all good, and I think this one did a bit better with the Scream face reveal. So yeah, definitely worth a watch. 43, Grown Ups. Grown Ups is from 2010. It's about these 5 friends. They reunite to mourn the death of their basketball coach. So they spend a comedy-filled weekend at a cabin in the woods with their families. And, it's not one where there's much of a plot. Sure, there's a grudge rematch of basketball at the end between these grown-ups and the team they beat back when their coach was around. But other than that, there's not much plot to it, but you're just watching it for the fun antics. Sandler and James. And Chris Rock, before he got slapped by Will Smith. Next up we have Batman Returns. The real question is Batman Returns a Christmas movie? Because it's set at Christmas. 1992, Michael Keaton's Batman returns to stop Danny DeVito's very, very, very weird Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. I think this one does really well. I think it does well exploring themes of duality between Batman and Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle and Catwoman, and also just the way that Oswald Cobblepot was treated, being abandoned as a baby on Christmas, growing up in the zoo, is coming out into a world that finds him disgusting and repellent, because let's face it, he looks disgusting and repellent, but he acts like he's trying to be a normal person. Until in the end he decides he's going to kidnap the firstborn child of every family and, I think, kill them, or something. So they knew what he felt like. Takes a bit of a dark turn. It's a dark movie, but I think this one explores some good themes and is probably the better of the two Batman Tim Burton movies, and probably the best pre-Dark Knight Batman movie. When was this one again? This was 89. So it was, no, it wasn't. It was not bad. 92. So yeah, it was definitely the best one of the 90s. Next up, Pixels. I don't get why people don't rate this movie well. This is a good movie. I think this is really fun premise. You got all these 80s arcade games that are coming back, and as these aliens coming back as 80s arcade game characters destroying things, they've got to fight them off. And, you know, Adam Sandler and Kevin James again, there's that dream team. And I think it's a fun movie. It's just fun. I mean, sure, maybe there's inconsistencies about the year it was set and everything, and the year that they sent the pod to space, and people at that conference wearing stuff from later 80s that doesn't exist yet. You know, there's inconsistencies, but look, you don't need to look that closely. I've watched this movie a lot of times, so I only noticed now. But, you know, it's a really fun movie if you just sit back and enjoy it and don't look too deep. 40, Scream 3 from 2000. So on the set for Stab 3, which is the fictional movie, Stab being the fictional movie series that Scream kind of spawns in its own universe, very meta, Ghostface reappears and he starts killing the cast members in his search for Sidney Prescott. That was quite interesting. Again, there's not always that much I could say about any of the movies, like giving away Ghostface. But, you know, it's the same again, but it does its own thing. It acts like a trilogy movie. 39, Liar Liar, starring Jim Carrey, as a lawyer who's not allowed to lie for 24 hours. And he's working a case in which he really desperately needs to lie to win the case. And so him trying to maneuver around that is amusing, as well as the fact that he very much just struggles to write "this pen is red" when it's blue. Like, just stuff like that. Like, he's such a funny actor, Jim Carrey. And it's from 1997. In 38th, I've put Scream from 1996. This is the first one, and I think the first one's the best one. Sidney Prescott is targeted by the mysterious Ghostface, and everybody is a suspect. That I really cannot tell you much more about this because I can't give anything away. But yeah, you're just gonna have to watch it and find out. 37, Halloween Ends. I don't know what the general agreement is on which Halloween movie is or isn't the best, but I think this 2022 movie Halloween Ends was the best one. It's about this young man called Corey. He falls in love with Laurie Strode's granddaughter, while a series of events, including crossing paths with Michael Myers, kind of upends his life and renders him a murderous outcast. So initially paranoid about Michael Myers, he accidentally causes the death of a child while babysitting for him, and he gets kind of shunned from the town and the society because of that. And you know, so he finds comfort with the granddaughter of the girl who was stalked by Michael Myers. And you you know, in the movie, he kind of becomes more and more deranged as it goes on, and ends up teaming up with Michael Myers, and I think even trying to kill Michael Myers at one point, and at one point dons his mask, and I think it was really clever how they brought like a second killer into it, who I think could have carried on the Halloween movies if not for the fact that the company making this trilogy, Blumhouse, no longer have the rights to Halloween now. And I think it was a good way to cap off the whole timeline, because there's like 6 or 7 timelines of Halloween. I think this was a good way to cap it off. You've resolved everything now, it's all good. And I think this is just, it wraps everything up. It's into a neat little movie, so this one wins for the Halloween movies for me. 36, Free Guy. Now, a lot of people might say this is kind of just a rehash of the Truman Show's basic idea of someone realizing their life isn't real. In 2021, Guy, an NPC in a video game called Free City, he becomes self-aware and he helps a real-world player reveal the truth about Free City, and that the game was actually stolen from this player's original design for a different game. And Ryan Reynolds is a funny guy, so obviously he handles the movie very well. And I think just the idea of the NPC in the video game becoming self-aware is a lot more, like, interesting to our new generation than, let's say, a reality show TV star. Not to say this is better than The Truman Show, but I enjoyed this more. And I feel like with the fact that it's a video game, there's a lot more, like, extreme and things you can experiment with compared to doing, like, the reality show setting that The Truman Show had, because I had to keep it realistic. You know, whereas in this movie, you've got Ryan Reynolds using Captain America's shield and a lightsaber to defeat a buff version of Ryan Reynolds. There's a lot more freedom when making this movie and a lot more room for experimentation, and I think it makes the movie overall more fun and more comedic. And so, yeah, that's why this movie's quite high up for me. It's very good. 35, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. So yeah, say what you will about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Maybe the acting with Palpatine, unlimited power! Or maybe Darth Vader's no at the end. Maybe they weren't the best moments of acting in the history of cinema. But I think overall, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I think all I need to say is the Battle of Mustafar between Obi-Wan and Anakin. That was just epic. But I think Grievous as well was pretty cool. The start was good. I think the story with Anakin delved into the dark side because he wanted to save Padme from death. Even though it ended up being that her death was caused by him. I think it was all good. Like, the only flaw is just some of the acting, I think, and maybe some of the dialogue. Like, really, why did Palpatine need to say unlimited power? That was so unnecessary. Additionally, you can make a good drinking game out of this if you take a sip of your drink every time a famous meme from this movie comes on. But it's a really good movie, honestly, and I think this is one of definitely the best Star Wars movies. I mean, I get it, everyone loves the original trilogy, but I think this movie's really good. And again, Battle of Mustafar. So going on to number 34, one of the movies I watched back in January. David Brent, Life on the Road. David Brent, for those who don't know, is the main character from the British version of the TV show The Office, which predates your American version. And David Brent, played by Ricky Gervais, is the manager of a paper company in Slough. Wernham Hogg, I believe it was called. The show ran for 2 seasons of 6 episodes and then 2 episodes of a Christmas special. As per usual with English TV shows, they don't always run very long. But then he did a movie called David Brent, Life on the Road, and it's about his character, David Brent, and he's trying to become like the singer. All of his songs are really strange. Movie's from 2016, and it's just David Brent goes on a music tour of Slough. For those of you who don't know where Slough is, it's equidistant between London and Reading, and one of his songs will make sure you know that, and the song is entitled Slough. You can tell what kind of musician he is from when you see that the names of his songs are Equality Street, Lady Gypsy, Please Don't Make Fun of the Disableds, And the headline song "Don't Cry, It's Christmas," which is about Santa only got one day to deliver toys. You have slightly less than that. You might not make it till Christmas morning. He has a very dark humor, Ricky Gervais, but it's really funny stuff. And a lot of it is just that he writes these lyrics that are good-hearted, like in "Please Don't Make Fun of the Disabled." He writes these lyrics about, oh, you really shouldn't make fun of the disabled. There's nothing funny about that. Whether they're mental in the head or mental in the legs, their sorrow. It doesn't mean their sorrow doesn't show. And then at one point he says that like even you even have to care about the ones that are basically just a head on a pillow. Like he doesn't mean to be offensive, but he is, and that's the fun of it. Like as well with the song Native American. Uh, Soar like an eagle, sit like a pelican. You can listen to his album on Spotify. His album Life on the Road. Like Ricky Gervais is just peak British comedy, but honestly, I love how funny this movie is, and just he's such a good guy, honestly. 33 Old. This is a movie from 2021. It's about hotel guests who get trapped on a beach where every 30 minutes ages them by a whole year. Now that's a very interesting premise, and of course this is an M. Night Shyamalan movie. For those of you who remember, M. Night Shyamalan's the guy who does the twist endings usually. Famous for movies such as Signs, The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Split, Glass. And he did all those good movies, and this one's really good. I find the premise really interesting of the time traveling faster than usual in this area, and I think the twist at the end was actually really interesting as well. When you find out why the time goes faster there. Well, actually, not so much why the time goes faster there, but more so why these hotel guests were taken to the beach where time goes faster. And I think it's just really interesting. And if you watch the movie, feel free to discuss with me in the comments. It poses an ethical question, really, of yes, what they're doing is for a good cause, but is it something that should be done like that, or should they maybe ask first or whatever? Like, so, I want to hear your thoughts on that if you've seen the movie. Number 32, The Avengers. I believe at some point this was called Avengers Assemble, but I don't remember. I feel like they changed the name of it. The Avengers 2012, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, who was recently in an accident and was in critical condition, but it looks like he's recovering now, which is good. So the 6 Avengers, they team up to stop Loki from conquering Earth with his army of the Chitauri, and the unknown fact that he holds the Space and Mind Stone at the same time. So it's a good movie. It's the first, like, solid superhero team-up movie. And, you know, it then paves the way for Avengers Age of Ultron, and then Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, which, if I had watched those this year, would be number 1 and 2 on my list. But I didn't watch those 2 this year. I didn't get around to it. And so it's given other movies a chance to get up on the list. So, otherwise, yeah, Endgame would be number 1, Infinity War would be number 2, and there'd be no denying it. But because those aren't in my list this year, you don't know what my number 1 and 2 is going to be. And no, I didn't watch The Mummy either. Okay, so, next movie. The Black Phone. This one I watched before going to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights because they had a house there that was themed on this. It was the same house as Freaky, actually. It was Blumhouse Haunted House. The Black Phone from 2021 is about a child who is taken by the Grabber and trapped in a basement with a disconnected phone that allows the kid to speak to the Grabber's previous dead victims. I think it's a really interesting. It's almost Shyamalanian in a way of the fact that he's talking to these dead people on a phone, and each of them tells him things to do and tells him different stories, and they all kind of link together to have a meaning by the end of it of how the kid can survive. And I think Ethan Hawke plays the Grabber really well, but I detect hints of Joaquin Phoenix Joker in that. I feel like their performances are similar. And I think Ethan Hawke does a good job as the main villain. And it's not overly scary if you're worried about watching movies that are scary. So this is fine to watch, trust me. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's a good movie. We're in the top 30 now, and we've got Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as a budding Sonic fan. I've recently coming into the franchise this year that's gone. I've really enjoyed this, and it's about Sonic and his new ally Tails, and they search for the Master Emerald before the returning Dr. Eggman of Jim Carrey and their new foe Knuckles, voiced very well by Idris Elba, find it first. So this one, I think it did a good fan service of Tails is voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who voices Tails in the mainline games and all that now. So I think that's a good throw, because a lot of people were annoyed that Chris Pratt was Mario in the upcoming Mario movie, and Charles Martinet's in it, but not as Mario. But so in this movie, they obviously they casted a slightly bigger name for Sonic and a big name for Eggman and Knuckles, but they went kind of with the roots of the series for Tails, and I think that actually served really well for them because it got the fans watching. I'm really happy about it, as well as the big names of Idris Elba getting other people who haven't played the games to watch it. I think the thing with this movie is everything that goes on with Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Eggman is really good. But I think the human side of the story fails a little bit. Like the whole thing with the wedding and everything. It's like I don't think that was the best, but it was a way to bring the Guardian Unit of Nations or whatever it is, Gun, into the series. And where you got Gun, you got Shadow the Hedgehog coming up, and I'm really interested to see what they do with Sonic 3. Me personally, I think they should go the route of the actual Shadow the Hedgehog game if Eggman's not going to be in it again. If Eggman's going to be in it, do Sonic Adventure 2 and put Eggman's Twitter announcement in it. That's all I've got to say. And I really hope Shadow finds that damn fourth Chaos Emerald. Number 29, Remember the Titans. If you tell me to name an American football movie, this is the first thing I'm going to say. Remember the Titans is the movie that does it the best when it comes to the underdog American football team, and tackles the very much still current problem of racism. And this is set in the time where the schools of the white people and black people were merging together for the first time. And obviously a lot of people had issues with that, with the integration of the two societies. And so the new coach, Denzel Washington, obviously a black coach, the white players don't take that so well to begin with, and he takes the whole team of both races away and forces them to integrate and teaches them to work as a team and to see each other not as two separate races but as one team, and their teams of family. And in the end, you've got, I think the most notable part is when you've got this white man, this white jock, and the black guy really good friends, even though the white guy's girlfriend doesn't want to accept the black friend yet, because obviously she's still set in the old ways of that the black were below the white. But I think just seeing the way that the two sides, the two races come together and form as a team, and after losing one of their players in an accident, they all kind of make sure they form together to win the game and to make sure that everyone remembers the Titans. And I think that just the fact that it's such a strong message that still upholds today, as well as the fact that it's a really good story and it's a really good American football movie, that this is definitely my right up at the top of sport movies for me, especially American football movies. This is number one. Now the next one I think I'm going to get some mixed responses from, and it's Thor Love and Thunder is number 28. Now I know that this movie has had very, very mixed reviews from the public, especially following Thor Ragnarok, which was considered the best Thor movie. To get this one, another Taika Waititi directed movie that may have lent a little too much into comedy. This movie from 2022 stars Thor and Jane Foster teaming up to stop the God Butcher Gorr from killing all the gods. I think Gorr was really good, and I think Bale carried, honestly. I think the story with Gorr, and that he found his actual god who failed him, and the fact that his daughter died in his god's name and his god treats him like nothing, and he kills him out of self-defense after his god attacks him, and then sets out to destroy all gods because he feels like that they're all just arrogant, who have all these followers and they're never going to do anything for them. I think he poses a really interesting question, actually, about gods. But I find his character very interesting, but I don't think he did enough god butchering on screen. Like, he killed some gods off screen. He took one other person's arm, but he didn't do much god butchering on screen. And I feel like that there could be more there. And then you get to and then we got to discuss the screaming goats. I think that's divided people. Because I think maybe that bit went on for too long, just a little bit. And then there's a few other things that don't really add up. Why would you open an ice cream parlor in New Asgard called Infinity Cones? Thanos literally gave your defender Thor PTSD after wiping out half the world. That would be the equivalent of making Hitler ice cream, or Genghis Khan ice cream, or some sort of like dictator or mad ruler. And then Axel, Heimdall's son, has a poster on his wall of the Mad Titans. His favorite band is based on the guy who murdered his dad. I think there's a few things that they throw in there just thinking about, oh, wouldn't this be funny? But they didn't think about the fact that actually that's incredibly insensitive to the people of Asgard. But, I mean, yeah, Thanos killed half of Asgard. Like, properly killed him as well, not just snap decimation. Like, he actually murdered half of Asgard. So I think there's a few things in there where the movie doesn't take itself too serious enough. Really, it's too lighthearted. But I think there's also a lot of good points. But the best point for me, I mean, despite the fact that I think the kids in the final battle kind of ruin the final battle, playing November Rain at that point was the perfect moment, honestly. So give it that. This movie had a good soundtrack, and you cannot deny that, honestly. Guns N' Roses for the win. 27, Black Adam. This is a new movie, 2022, starring Dwayne Johnson as a superhero. We finally get to see it. It's a hero with the power of the gods. He's freed from his prison to bring justice to his homeland. Basically, he's a superhero that kills people. And he opposes a almost Suicide Squad kind of team of Hawkman, Dr. Fate, and two others. I can't remember the names. And, so Black Adam is this anti-hero who just wants to defend his hometown from any threat. And I think this was a really good movie. And I think it balanced expectations well. It did certain things to throw you off. Again, a twist. But I think it was really good. And I think Dwayne Johnson, pretty much almost any movie Dwayne Johnson's been in is a good movie. And hey, look, he did a movie that's not set in a jungle for once. So there you go. 26, and the next two are from the same trilogy. This is Hot Fuzz. Now, the Cornetto trilogy, I'd say, is probably a staple of British cinematography. All three movies star Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And this one is kind of the parody of all the typical cop movies you get. I mean, look at the tagline. They're bad boys, they're diehards, they're lethal weapons, they are Hot Fuzz. So clearly, you know what you're signing up for here. It's a British comedy parody of police movies in which they're trying to figure out the culprit behind criminal activity going on, and it's real funny. The reason they're called the Cornetto trilogy is there's usually a cornetto in each of the movies, and in this one the cornetto is blue, representing Blue, the police force. The next movie on the list is Shaun of the Dead, number 25, and this movie is from 2004. Hot Fuzz was 07. And this one is Shaun, played by Simon Pegg, and he sets out, where is it? Yeah, he sets out with a plan to save his family and friends from a zombie apocalypse by hiding in a pub. Once again starring Nick Frost as well, and some people from The Office UK as well. Again, classic British movie. It's a parody of Dawn of the Dead. It's the typical zombie movie, but it's a British parody. And, it's really fun. The cornetto in this one is red for all the blood. And I think it's just nice. It's a zombie movie, but it's not scary. It's a comedy. And I think these three movies they're so well done. And number 24 is The World's End, the final of the Cornetto trilogy. It's 2013. Gary King, played by Simon Pegg, reunites his quintet of friends for a 12 pints at 12 pubs challenge, but unintentionally uncovers a robot invasion. And the cornetto in this one is green for like aliens, because he returns to his hometown and none of them are human anymore. And I think this one is my favorite, and I'm not really 100% sure why. I think maybe just like I like the maybe it's just I have an obsession with drinking, but I just love the buddy comedy style of there's these five guys just going on a pub crawl. But I like the idea of these humans were all placed as robots and they didn't figure that out till partway through. It was quite interesting. And then the ending was quite funny as well. Like I think the ending says a lot about humanity, and that anyone who tries to like save the world for our greater good should just follow the advice of Mr. Simon Pegg at the end of this of sod off. But no, the Cornetto trilogy is a very solid trilogy of movies. I mean, sure they're not related, but it's the same creator, it's the same actors, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And I got to thank the YouTuber Clack of the Geek, Danny, for telling me to watch these movies, because I thank you, because these have actually been some of my favorite movies this year. They were so fun to watch. Number 23 is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. So you've sat through 7 movies of Harry Potter ranging from average to pretty good. And it's worth it, because then you get to this 2011 masterpiece, Deathly Hallows Part 2, in which Harry returns to Hogwarts for a final battle against Voldemort's dark forces. And almost the entirety of this movie is the final battle, which is almost an endgame scale battle. It's like Lord of the Rings kind of scale as well. You got massive armies, and this was such a good movie. Honestly, it makes the rest worth it. This movie was amazing. But I think the best part for me was Snape's redemption arc. I'm told Snape in the books is very different from Snape in the movies, and I have no intention of reading the books. They look way too long. I'm not a reader, I'm a watcher. But Snape was done really well in these movies, played by Alan Rickman. And I think as well, just the like Voldemort and obviously like Draco as well, and trying to figure out if he wants to be serving Voldemort, and just like even just little things like just Neville Longbottom getting a chance to be a hero. Like this movie's like ties up so many different like storylines from throughout the entire series. Like I think it just does a really good job of being a finale. I mean, sure they've done Fantastic Beasts movies as prequels, but I think this is the perfect ending to the Harry Potter series. I think they've done really well with that. Although I heard maybe they might do more movies. I did hear they did another book afterwards they might do a movie of. But I think this was really good. It's definitely up there. 22. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Say what you will about Phase 4. I think this was a good movie. I mean, sure, it's about a girl who lost both her moms to a bee, getting chased down by a mother who's not actually a mother, who's trying to... basically, Scarlet Witch is chasing America Chavez to get her multiverse traveling powers, to get to the multiverse where Scarlet Witch still has children, like in WandaVision. And oddly enough, doesn't want to find a world where Vision's still alive, just wants to find a world where her kids are alive. That's very strange. But Doctor Strange, of course, is trying to stop Scarlet Witch, and in traveling to different universes, comes across Mr. Fantastic, played by Jim Halpert from The Office, and comes across an evil Doctor Strange, and then there's also a zombie Doctor Strange. Like, there's a lot of madness, and it's not always easy to follow, but I think this is a really good movie, and it's very, like, visually fun to watch as well. I think one of the better movies of Phase 4 of MCU. 21. Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014. So this sees a group of intergalactic criminals teaming up to stop a power-crazy warrior with plans to purge the universe using the Power Stone. And, yeah, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are great. And if I'd watched the second one this year, the second one I do slightly prefer over the first one. But it's such a good movie. And the new one's out in May. I can't wait for that. It's going to be the last Guardians movie, though, and I can tell someone's going to die. But I think the first movie does it really well. It has the soundtrack that obviously people have come to love, the awesome mix soundtrack. It's got obviously great characters, great actors. Guardians is just, it's one of those movies where if you see Guardians of the Galaxy in the movie, you know it's going to be a good movie. And if you see James Gunn as director, you know it's going to be a good movie. James Gunn as superhero movies just works. Why do you think he's the head of DC now? And don't get me started on the fact he fired Henry Cavill and everyone else from the previous DCEU. Just trust what he's doing. I'm sure it's going to work. Don't boycott Guardians 3. Number 20, The Dark Knight Rises. I wish I knew what Tom Hardy was thinking when he voiced Bane. I really do, because his take on Bane was very interesting. But either way, Christian Bale's final outing as Batman fighting Tom Hardy's Bane in 2012. I think this was a good movie. It's just, it's not quite The Dark Knight. It's not quite as good as that one. But, you know, I think there was a lot to it. But again, I think Bane is iconic in this movie because his voice is such a strange choice with his voice, but Hardy stuck with it and it's become super iconic. And, you know, it's one of those ones that anyone can try to do an impression of, you know? I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body. I'm not the best. That was when Bane broke Batman's back. But yeah, I think it was a good movie. It wasn't Dark Knight. That's the only thing. Dark Knight has set the bar really high. But other than that, great job. Great job with that one. That's very good. Very iconic. Number 19 is The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson as the Batman. And I gotta be honest, when I was told that the guy from Twilight was going to be the Batman, I didn't really think, how would that be possible? But you know what? Kudos to him. Robert Pattinson did a great job as Batman. Bruce Wayne? Maybe. But maybe he wasn't as good as some other people as Bruce Wayne, but as Batman, he did a great job, really. And I think the thing with this movie is it combines some of the action of other Batman movies with also the detective side of Batman, because he was always the world's greatest detective in the comics, and is trying to figure out the Riddler's riddles. And I think this version of the Riddler, while so incredibly different from Jim Carrey's Riddler, works really well. And, you know, I'm really excited to see where the next Batman movies are going from this. And that was, oh, that was this year as well. Yeah, we've had some good movies this year. Number 18, Spider-Man. This is the first one with Tobey Maguire from 2002, in which Peter Parker fights the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. And I think this movie is really good. Like, it's one of the best superhero movies. And it's just done so well by director Sam Raimi. He's done such a great job. I think the only thing I can flaw about this movie is just Green Goblin's mask. He looks scarier without it on. Like, I could see why he didn't want to have that mask in No Way Home, and that he destroyed it pretty soon. He had it on at the beginning, and then he got rid of it, because honestly it was terrible. I could see why Willem Dafoe didn't want to keep that around. But otherwise, this is an almost perfect Spider-Man movie. It's not Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is number 17, in which Peter Parker fights Otto Octavius, Doc Ock. I think this one is just as good as the first movie, but doesn't have the flaw of the villain has a dumb mask. I think Doc Ock is done really well, and that he has this kind of internal struggle with, he doesn't want to hurt people, but his arms are controlling him, with the AI or whatever. And I think it's just really interesting. And I think this one does it really well. So yeah, this is probably my top Spider-Man movie this year, because I didn't watch Far From Home or No Way Home this year. Number 16, Groundhog Day. This is a movie I just keep watching again and 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 again, and you get the point. Groundhog Day from 1993 is about a weatherman, Bill Murray. He plays Phil Connors. He's forced to repeat the same day over and 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 over again. until eventually he kind of learns how to become the best person he can be. Now, why is he doing this? Why does this happen? That's not a question you're supposed to ask, because let's face it, suspend your disbelief is what you have to do for this movie, because it's more just about the concept rather than how do you get to that concept. And I think it's a really clever one of the fact that, like, just that he learns skills over his one repeated day, that then means he's basically learned how to play piano in a day, or learned how to carve ice sculptures in a day. And I think it's one of those movies that it's a funny comedy, and it's one you can keep going back to, and it's a classic, honestly. It really is. Number 15, Die Hard. Die Hard is one of the best movies of all time. There's no denying it. And it's not higher on my list because there are just other movies that maybe not as good, I just enjoy more. But Die Hard set the bar for so many movies afterwards. And Die Hard is just, it's Die Hard. It's so iconic. It's Bruce Willis in his most famous role, John McClane, taking on terrorists led by Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman. And it's quotable, it's a Christmas movie, and don't even try and tell me it's not. It's a Christmas movie. It's set at Christmas. He's there for Christmas. Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. It's Christmas. And I think this is just such an amazing movie. And that, because before that, all your action movies, you had people like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, these big buff-looking guys, Dolph Lundgren, Van Damme being a martial arts expert, he gets away with it. And then you've got Bruce Willis, who doesn't look like them. He looks more like an everyday person. And yet he's still taking on all these terrorists, not by just running in guns blazing, but by taking them out one by one and whatnot. Like, and it kind of showed that you don't need to have big people as your action stars. Like, you don't have to let, like, the typecast Stallone, Schwarzenegger kind of people. Although now we do have kind of typecasted Dwayne Johnson. But anyone can be an action star, and it can just be a regular cop. It doesn't have to be bigger man Schwarzenegger going in the Terminator, shooting everybody commando. That said, I do love Schwarzenegger going in Terminator commando stuff, you know. But Die Hard, it's one of those movies you have to watch at some point in your life. Number 14, The Dark Knight. By far, best Batman movie. I mean, I didn't watch the 60s one this year, but I love the 60s one. But Dark Knight from 2008. Bale's Batman returns and he faces off against Heath Ledger's Oscar-winning Joker. And I don't really think I need to justify myself on why it's high in the list. It's just that there are other movies I enjoyed slightly more, and that's why it's not higher. But it's such a good movie. This is the best Batman movie. And Heath Ledger's just such a good Joker in the sense of who the Joker is in the Batman universe. And I think it's a mix of good acting, good script. I like what they did with Two-Face as well. And like, I think just the whole thing, it's just such a good movie, honestly. Number 13, Dodgeball. Now, I love myself a comedy, and I love myself a sports movie, and I guess this counts as a sports movie. Dodgeball stars Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller as as competing gym owners. Ben Stiller owns Globo Gym, the biggest gym in the area, and across the road is Vince Vaughn in Average Joe's Gymnasium, which is suffering from crippling debt and lack of customers. But they decide that if they get good, they can play dodgeball and win $50,000 to pay it off. And so they learn dodgeball from an old dodgeball coach, Patrick O'Houlihan, who's convinced that if they can dodge wrenches, they can dodge balls. And then they get into this big dodgeball tournament against Ben Stiller's team. And, you know, it's a funny movie. It's an underdog story, a true underdog story, as the subtitle says. And it's one of those ones I'll just watch, like, I'll come back to it after like a year or so and be like, this is funny, I'll watch it again. It's always a good time. Number 12, Megamind. You know what, it came out at a similar time to Despicable Me, and I think that's why it never got a sequel, but it is getting a TV show soon, apparently. But Megamind is probably one of the best animated movies there is. Especially the best villain becomes hero kind of story. Megamind is just so iconic, honestly. It's the story of, well, Megamind in this 2010 movie. in which the supervillain finally succeeds in defeating the hero, only to realize he lacks purpose, and so he tries to create a new hero to fight, Titan, who then becomes more bad. I mean, memes aside, this movie is just, it's so memorable. It's just, I mean, sure, Despicable Me had Minions, but Megamind had Minion. Come on, Despicable Me clearly ripped off Megamind. But Megamind is just such an amazing movie, honestly. You've got to watch it if you haven't. And if you haven't, what have you been doing? Number 11, one of my personal favourite Christmas movies, Daddy's Home 2. I think this is one that kind of flew under the radar for most people. So the first movie was about these kids and their dad, Mark Wahlberg, and their stepdad, Will Ferrell. The dad comes back into the scene, and obviously Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, they have themselves a little rivalry about trying to be the better dad, and they keep trying to upstage each other and everything. And then in the end, they kind of become like a solid family. The dad's remarried, the stepfather's still with the mother. And so in this movie, the dad and stepdad have their dads over, and they all go on like a Christmas vacation to like a log cabin, and they do all this Christmas stuff. And they're still trying to upstage each other because Mark Wahlberg's dad, Mel Gibson, keeps stirring the pot, while Will Ferrell's dad, John Lithgow, is not making things easier. Meanwhile, John Cena comes into the picture, and the movie ends with a very fun rendition of Do They Know It's Christmas Time. I love this Christmas movie so much. Sure, it's not one of your classics, but I really like it, and I feel like it's very underrated as a movie, and it just missed out on top 10. Finally, top 10, and my number 10 is Jingle All the Way. This movie has sort of a cult following. It's not rated very well as a Christmas movie, but it's my favorite Christmas movie. I love this movie. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he works just as well in a comedy as he does in an action movie. And he's left it to Christmas Eve to buy his son, the young Anakin Skywalker, the most wanted toy of the year. And he goes everywhere trying to find this toy in this 1996 movie. He tries to get this Turbo Man action figure, and then he ends up in a rivalry with a mailman played by Sinbad, who also wants to get the toy for his child on Christmas. And in the end, Arnold Schwarzenegger learns that the best way to get his son a Turbo Man is to become Turbo Man. I'll leave the rest to you to watch it, but please watch it. It's so much fun. And it's also really quotable. I mean, I love just saying anything that Arnold Schwarzenegger says. I mean, his voice is just so much fun to do. Put that cookie down, now! Who said you could touch my cookie? I don't know if that sounded good or not, but... Arnold. Honestly. National treasure for Austria. Number 9, Pig. This may have flown under your radars. This is a sort of drama about a man whose pig is kidnapped. The man is Nick Cage. Now, if you know anything about Nick Cage, you know that in recent years he's done a lot of movies of questionable quality. But in 2021 he did Pig. And it's literally just Nick Cage is looking for his truffle pig. I don't think I've ever been speechless before when I finished a movie, but this was it. I struggled to even explain the movie. It's Nick Cage and he looks for his pig. And it's sort of John Wick / Taken kind of thing, except he doesn't go and fight people violently, but instead fights people by using his chef skills. And it's not even as badass as that sounds. He basically goes on almost like a detective hunt trying to track down his pig. So he comes across like an underground chef fighting arena, and then he ends up meeting up with another chef, and he gets answers out of him by sort of like making comments on his cooking style. And then in the end, like, his main plan to resolve the situation to get his pig back is to cook a meal for the man who took his pig. And I know it sounds strange, but hear me out, it's a good movie. I think you should watch it if you haven't, because I can't really say. I mean, it's one of those ones you just have to experience it. I wish I could put words to it, but I'm not good with words. but it's just, I think the emotional weight of the ending is so strong, honestly. Moving on from that, we've got The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, in which Nicolas Cage stars as Nick Cage. Yep, he's playing himself, a fictionalized version of himself, a slightly more, what's the word I'm looking for? Extravagant version of himself. And as a failing actor, he takes a gig for $1 million to go to a superfan's birthday party. Superfan being Pedro Pascal, who has so much Nick Cage memorabilia from all his movies. And so this 2022 movie, so he goes to this birthday party for Pedro Pascal, who seems to be a crime lord, and then he ends up in this real life action film. Additionally, Nick Cage also hallucinates a 90s version of himself, who he seems to have problems coping with. But also, Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal, they are trying to also write a movie together, but that movie ends up being the movie that they are in. The best way to describe this movie is a meta-comedy, buddy comedy, action drama with a twist. It's one of those movies that it's so unbelievably Nick Cage, and I think everyone should watch it, because I think, again, it's another one that flew under radars. I remember when it came out in cinema this year, they barely showed it. Like, it was like a screening a day in a small screen or something. And then it's on Sky Cinema now, but I don't think it'll be on there for long, so I got the DVD of it. But it's definitely worth a watch, trust me. When am I ever wrong? Number 7, Armageddon. Sure, there's a lot you could say about this movie that maybe it doesn't make sense. Like, your first thought, instead of training astronauts to be oil diggers, is to train oil diggers to be astronauts. Maybe it doesn't make sense. But I love this movie. I've seen this movie so many times. It's one of the ones that I watched when I was much younger, and I loved it so much, I kept watching it and watching it. And it's Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck, very young Ben Affleck, and the daughter of Aerosmith, Steven Tyler. And it's a movie about an asteroid that's coming towards the Earth, and they send a bunch of oil diggers, either, up onto the asteroid to drill a hole, place a nuke in it, and blow the asteroid up. And it has quite a cast to it, actually. Steve Buscemi's in it. I think Owen Wilson was in it. And yes, it's got quite a cast, and I just really like the movie. I really enjoy it. And at the end, though, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith kicks in. Great song. But yeah, it's just one of the movies I will always come back to. It's such a good movie. Number 6, Here Comes the Boom. Now, how many of you remember this 2012 piece? Biology teacher Scott Voss takes up MMA to earn money to save his school's music department. So basically, Kevin James, accompanied by the Fonz, takes up the UFC to earn money to save his school's music department. And it's a really nice story, and I think as well the message of without music life would be a mistake is kind of true. I think music's very important. But I just love this movie. I mean, we're a family that like the UFC and whatever, and wrestling, so we enjoy that kind of stuff. So UFC movie, good. Kevin James comedy, good. I mean, what's not to like? And it's just, again, it's one of those ones that I watched when I was much younger. I think when I watched it, we were the only 3 people in the cinema, which is crazy. Because I think it was actually the second time we watched it twice in cinema, I think, because we just enjoyed it so much. I just don't make them like this anymore. This is such a great film, honestly. We're in the top 5 now. I had a really hard time figuring out the top 5. There were just so many, like, I knew my top 5, I just didn't know how to order them, because they're very different movies. Well, no, 2 of them are very similar movies, but overall, we've got some very different movies here. And it's a case of, which one's the better movie? Which one do I prefer? One of them gives me a lot of nostalgia, so it's a case of, does that play a factor for me? So I really wasn't sure, and I'm still not 100% sure, but I think this is my top 5. Number 5, we've got Pirates of the Caribbean: At World's End. You could probably guess that in the other movie that's in the top five that's similar to this. So Outworld's End follows on from Dead Man's Chest, and it's from 2007, and it's about Jack Sparrow, and he has to be recovered from Davy Jones's locker because he died, and to fight in a war of the pirates against the East Indian Trading Company and Davy Jones, who is now controlled by Cutler Beckett and the East Indian Trading Company because they have the heart of Davy Jones in a box. And so the movie is mostly about, trying to the pirates trying to fight back against the East Indian Trading Company, and then also trying to stop Davy Jones, who obviously has so much power with his ship and his crew that don't die, and they're under the control of the trading company. And obviously the way to stop Davy Jones is stab the heart. So there's a whole thing there. And I think the only reason I would possibly consider this being better than Dead Man's Chest would be because of the final scene with the battle on the Maelstrom between the Black Pearl and the Flying Dutchman. I think that was just really well done. But in the end, I've put this down at number 5. Because I think there are parts of it that do feel slow. And it is quite a long movie, to be fair. But overall, I really like this movie, honestly. Number 4, Joker. Is it weird that I find a little bit of relatability with the Joker? And I feel like that's the idea as most people are supposed to, because you're supposed to feel sorry for the guy. This is a very different take on the Joker, and it is not the Joker from Batman. It's its own thing, really. Because Joker's Batman, that's what Heath Ledger did. This is kind of completely different. Sure, it has reference to the Waynes, and Bruce Wayne's child was in it, but this is a completely different story, and I think what they've done here is really good, and I could see why it won awards. Obviously, it tells a lot. It's mostly a story about society and the effect it had on Arthur Fleck. So this movie's from 2019. It's about this clown who's also an aspiring comedian, and he has a mental illness, and he's been abandoned by society, and he's driven to commit murder after being beaten up so much by these people. Because he has a laughing disorder where he just starts laughing randomly, and a lot of people take offense to that, and so they beat him up. And one time he just snapped and killed these people on the train. And after committing murder, he unintentionally starts a whole city-wide revolution against the wealthy, as a poor person standing up and fighting back against these rich snobs who are beating him up. So he ends up starting like a whole revolution and kind of rising to fame that way. And I think it's such an interesting movie to watch. Moving on to number 3. I'm on the top 3 now. Number 3 is Pacific Rim. This is actually this was my favourite movie until Infinity War came out. Because Pacific Rim, I watched it in 2013, so I would have been about 10 or 9, and I saw this on this really big cinema screen. It was called the Giant Screen. It was really big. If you're in England, it's at Birmingham City University now, but they used to be able to let anyone go there to watch cinema movies, and so we watched on this big screen, and just something about these mechs and these giant kaiju water aliens just fighting each other was so awesome to me when I was that age, that it stuck with me, and this is my number 1 nostalgia movie. This was my favorite movie for so long. And I just loved everything about it. I used to watch it constantly. I could quote it like crazy back in the day. It was just, I just loved the epic scale of it. It's one of the only movies I've actually sat through the director's commentary for. And Guillermo del Toro knew what he was doing. And the sequel maybe wasn't as good. And the anime series on Netflix is pretty okay. And I don't think we're ever going to get that 3rd movie. But I always have this movie to come back to. And honestly, I think just the 20-minute intro was so good. The battle with Knifehead and Gypsy Danger is just so cool. But just the moment near the end where the Category 5 kaiju Slashun comes out of the breach is just that was so cool to me back in the day, honestly. I mean, sure, my opinions have changed nowadays, and for maybe stories with more depth, or maybe more like adult themes and more violence or whatever. But this, I'll always come back to Pacific Rim because this is just, it's just such a good action movie. Why watch Godzilla vs Kong when you can watch Gypsy Danger against Knifehead? Oh man, this movie was so cool. Number two, The Suicide Squad. Again, not to be confused with my very, very low-ranked movie, Suicide Squad, which was like 164 or something. The Suicide Squad is a James Gunn masterpiece. Now, this movie was absolutely not what you expect at all. I mean, you sent a bunch of Z-tier villains to fight a giant starfish. You get what you pay for. And what you got is, Idris Elba as Bloodsport, who does a really good job. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, who everyone seems to love. John Cena's Peacemaker, who's probably one of my favourite superheroes now, especially after his own TV show. Watch the intro to the Peacemaker TV show, trust me, it's so funny. And then you've got the Polka Dot Man, who actually, if you told me I'd ever given out about the Polka Dot Man, I would have laughed. But you know what? They did him so well. I'm genuinely shocked. You got Ratcatcher 2, who has the power to control rats. Rick Flag from the first movie. And King Shark, Nanaue. He's voiced by Sylvester Stallone. I've never cared so much about a shark in my life. Every time I thought he was going to die, I was so worried. Because I was like, oh no, please don't kill Nanaue. He's too good for this world, honestly. Like, he's just such a nice character. I mean, there are all these other characters too that in like the first 20 minutes, you've got Captain Boomerang, the detachable kid, the weasel. There's so much fun stuff in here. And you know James Gunn, he's having a fun time with his superhero movies, and he does so well with this. This one's, it's visually nice to watch. It's got sort of that war story kind of feel as well. I mean, it starts almost like a Storm the Beach kind of thing, and then ends up being like a war mission in like a third world South American country kind of thing. And it's just, it's so much fun, honestly. Like, this was probably the first movies since after COVID I really had loads of fun watching at cinema. Because obviously COVID had really killed the cinema industry. But then this movie came out, and it was just so fun to watch, honestly. However, my number one pick is upcoming. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. Yes, it's a long movie, but this is my favourite movie of the year. And if you ask me again in a couple of days, I might have said The Suicide Squad or Pacific Rim. But I've decided Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. It's been quite relevant to me this year, because I've watched it once or twice, actually, in the recent year. And I've just really enjoyed it. I think the plot is really good. Like, it's got the stakes are there, the plot's there, you got good characters in it, everyone's got their own motives, and I think the selling point for me is Davy Jones. Like, he's just such a good villain, and regardless of the fact that his theme is my number 9 most listened to song of 2022 on Spotify, I think they've just done such a good job making this movie, and I don't really know if there's much more for me to say, because I know I've talked about this movie on my very old top 10 sequels movie list, but I really enjoy this movie, and I feel like it's one of the best movies there is. There's a lot of movies I didn't watch this year, a lot of movies I've never watched at all that you might think are the best movies ever, and I haven't seen them, because there's so many movies in the world, and there's only so much time in a year, especially when I've had school to deal with the first half and work for the second half, and being away in Florida for a month, I didn't get much time to watch movies there either. So, you know, there's only so many movies you can watch in a year. And so I didn't get around to everything I wanted to do. So if there are any really good movies that you think I should watch that are easily accessible, let me know in the comments, and I might try and get them onto next year's list. And if I remember, I might give you a shout out for it too. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed my very long ranking list. What, are we clocking in near 3 hours or something? I can't believe it. I didn't think I was going to be this long. But here we go. 3 hours. If you've sat through all this, respect, honestly, thank you so much for the view hours. I only need 1,000 view hours to start monetizing, and you've just helped me out. Thank you. And yeah, so the typical. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whatever that every YouTuber says ever. It's so cliche. And it's just nice to be making a video again for all of you. That's like this. So I get to talk to you about something like this. So and hopefully I'll be able to talk about the Mario movie when that comes out. That was pretty cool. But in the meantime, I did those videos of the Mario movie trailer that were kind of stupid, but you can watch those. And if you've seen these movies, let me know. I really want to know if you've seen either of those two Nick Cage movies that were in my top 10 because they're really good. And just let me know what your thoughts are on the whole thing. You don't need to talk to me about all 168 movies on the list though, but just let me know what you're thinking. Just leave a comment. I'd love to talk to any one of you about movies, so just keep it coming. And hopefully I'll be able to do the same again next year. I haven't watched any movies yet this year, but hopefully at the end of the year I will be able to give you another list. And I'm hoping I might be able to hit 200 in some year, which was my goal for this year, but I didn't make it. So yeah, thank you for watching, if you actually still are, and see you around.